雪の進軍氷を踏んでどれが川やら道さえ知れず馬は倒れるすけずここはいずくぞ皆敵の国ままよ大胆一服やれば頼み少なやタバコが2本飯に生地命のあるそのうちはこらえきれない寒さの焚き火煙はずだよ生気がいぶる渋い顔して巧妙話水というのは梅干し一つ楽な不思議灰の枕に街灯かぶやセナのぬくみで雪解けかかるヤグの君がらしっぽり濡れて結びかれたる漏洩の夢を月は冷たく顔覗き込む身ゆえ死ぬる覚悟で突貫すれどつだなく討ち死にせねば義理に絡めた十兵回ったそろりそろりと首絞めかかるどうせ生きては帰らぬつもり雪の進軍氷を踏んでどれが川やら道さえ知れず馬は倒れる捨てても置けずここはいずくぞ皆敵の国ままよ大胆一服やれば頼み少なやタバコが2本飯に生地命のあるそのうちはこらえきれない寒さの焚き火煙はずだよ生気がいぶる渋い顔して巧妙話水というのは梅干し一つ
Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of I.N.C.E.L Identitarian Nationalist Conservative Esoteric Legion. Tonight we're having a special debate with, or more probably it'd be better to call it a discussion between the boy Rem and our good friend of the show, Mike Enoch. Both are they like to participate in a lot of our content, and so it's great having them both here. I'll just let them introduce themselves. I'll let Mike Enoch go first. Just tell us a little about yourself, big guy.
Yeah, this is the real Mike Enoch. Totally not clickbait or anything. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, let's see, I'm a nationalist, so I'm an American nationalist, I believe that America has a sort of core European identity and then a cultural identity on top of that. Let's see what else. I'm pro-life. That's what we're talking about right now. So we'll get into that more. But yeah, I'm pro-life in pretty much every situation. And let's see, I'm studying economics right now, and I think that's about all that's relevant here. Yeah. I'll
Awesome.
let
All right, Rem, I want to just quick introduction so people know who you are.
Yeah, so again, this isn't like a super formal debate. I don't really care all that much about the abortion issue. In terms of politics, I guess you could broadly consider me a nationalist, though I think like ideology in general is gay. I tend to go with what works. Um, for me, like my understanding of you guys generally is you're just civ nuts with extra steps and like some Christianity tacked on, which is fine. I'm not gonna attack you for that. But I think abortion is just in general beneficial for eugenic purposes, and I think that's like we might be discussing the morality of that and the genetic legitimacy of that position and so forth. But yeah, there's that.
Awesome. All right, let's just jump right into the abortion topic then. I guess I'll start with Rem, since you're taking the positive position. Would you like to, I guess, explicate your view on when, like the kind of like the boundaries of when you think abortion is okay and why that you believe that?
Sure. So I think I got to break it down into two things. One is like
Mm-hmm.
the genetic aspect to it, wherein like I'm not someone who's going to deny that a baby inside the womb is a baby. It's still a human life. It has a life force. It has a unique DNA code and so on. So it still can be immoral to kill that, but there are positive outcomes to killing people. You take that out of context, it looks kind of fucked. But so there's that position just in general. Like there are some genes that are going to be harmful to the overall gene pool of whatever country or society that you happen to care about, and it would be beneficial just in an amoral sense to get rid of those. So that's kind of the premise I operate from. In terms of like the more practical aspect of it, I obviously wouldn't want a baby who's been developed for 9 months, 6 months, so that it can feel pain and so forth. I wouldn't want to harm a baby. Like if you know you're pregnant, you can get rid of it quickly, ideally. So I guess I'd be pro-abortion with a caveat that the baby would not be able to feel pain. I don't know what developmental stage that's at exactly, because again, I don't really care too much about the abortion debate. But as long as the baby isn't suffering, it's not conscious, it's not a human life in the same aspect as or same respect as as the mother or the father and so on. So I'm fine with that from a moral perspective. Even though I find, again, killing a baby is obviously immoral. Just in terms of the outcome, I think the benefits of abortion outweigh the immoral steps you need to take to get to that beneficial place for the population that you happen to care about.
Okay, thank you. Mike Enoch, would you like to respond?
yeah, I mean, so I think we can get more into the genetic stuff
Mm-hmm.
in a bit and the issue of eugenics. Um, right as of now, I think it's more important to focus on the moral issue. And you mentioned taking of human life having positive outcomes, but I think there are a couple of things here that make this different from normal situations where we take human life. One is the kind of, let's see, the innocence of this particular human life, right? That like ordinarily when we take human life, it's a guilty person or it's a person who's an immediate threat to you, whereas under this circumstance, it's somebody who isn't, right? It's an innocent person. And secondly, I think this is more important. The relationship between the parent and the child is different than the relationship between somebody else who you might kill for supposedly the greater good, right? So, a parent's main obligation, probably one of their strongest obligations, is to look after their kid. I think we probably even would agree with this. And so that's sort of when you have a parent betray their own kid and take their kid's life, I think that's a very serious. It's not just a murder; it's a betrayal, right? So it's a very, very serious thing. It's not like some of these ordinary trade-offs we make, where it's like, oh, we cut healthcare spending and X number of people die. It's a very serious thing. Secondly, kind of as a nationalist, which seemed like you were kind of open to calling yourself a nationalist. The family, right? The bond between parent and child is kind of the foundation of national identity, I think, right? But like that's how you get your national identity, right? You don't get it by it's not a club that you join, right? It's something that is passed along to you by your parents from your ancestors and down each generation, I guess. So that would be my main counterpoint to that, to the moral issue. You were talking about pain and sort of pain being the cutoff point for you. I think the cutoff point for pain is 20 weeks to 30 weeks. So just to clarify my position, I'm pro-life, meaning that I believe that at conception, a fetus is a person and is entitled to legal protection in basically every circumstance. So yeah, that's it, I think.
Okay, thank you. Ryan, I'm just kind of hoping it'd be just a back and forth, but
Oh, okay, sorry, buddy. If you want to ask more specific questions that got it in any specific way, that's fine. So from what I recall, you had 3 points there. The first, I think I 100% agree with, in that it's immoral to take a human life that's innocent, just on the basis of that. But again, I would have to say that, and this might even just be like a subjective thing we disagree with, and then move on. I think the outcome of taking out certain, interest groups that happen to get abortions at higher rates, the outcome of that is more beneficial than stopping them from doing so, and then potentially victimizing interest groups we might care about more, certainly that I care about more down the line. But in general, yeah, I agree with you. It's a human life, and that taking it is immoral in every instance because it hasn't done anything yet. I just happen to think that the outcome of allowing different interest groups to harm themselves is more beneficial to the interest group I care about. In terms of the parental bond you talked about, the question I'd have to raise to that is, do you want parents who would kill their kids raising kids? Like, would you want to have a mother who's all the willing to kill her kid to be forced to then pass on those fucked up genes, as I think you would understand them to be, to pass on those genes and to be a mother when she really would rather have her child die? I think if the child isn't conscious and doesn't feel pain, you would spare the child that, and you would spare the gene pool that having those defective genes passed on, to where a mother isn't a nurturing, caring person. She's someone who would rather rip a baby from her own womb. I think it's better that those people are out of the gene pool completely, or at the very least breed less. And then for your third point, I think you said something about consciousness or something. Could you remind me of that? It was something about consciousness.
Well, so that was just about the national identity. It was about a national identity being sort of rooted in the family, right? That
Oh,
national identity
okay, yeah.
passed from. So when you disrupt those bonds, you're disrupting the bonds of national identity as well, right?
Yeah,
it's
because it
not
kind of
just gonna be.
piggybacked off the parental. Yeah. So I understand what you mean. You're talking more about culture. I tend to just say genes are more important than culture. You can always rebuild a culture. You can never rebuild genes. And so I guess it's not really like, it doesn't answer your question fully. But yeah, I think I've said enough for you to respond to. If you want to go back into the third thing, rehash it more, we can talk about that afterwards. But I think I've given you enough for now.
Yeah, I'm fine with it just being like sort of a back and forth. We list our points, we respond. Yeah, so let's see. Your first point, and let me know if I'm summarizing this correctly, was basically that. Let's see. I remember your second point pretty well. Your second point was that the parent has bad genes and isn't going to be a good parent to the kid. I don't know if I buy into that, because there is an element of personal choice there, and I don't know if the number of people who get abortions is pretty high. So I don't know if the person who is getting the abortion, I think a lot of it's ignorance, right? And there are a lot of people
ignorance
who
is
regret
still
it.
a result of genes. And just to like clarify my position initially, like the first point, I generally agreed with you. It was about like, is it a human life? Is the baby innocent? Obviously, the baby hasn't done anything wrong. It's just a matter of outcome. And then we talked about the parent thing about.
Yeah, I think you also mentioned the overall outcome being better for society, and this is probably, I think that this and AR would probably agree with this, is going to be the main dividing point of the debate. I'm a deontologist. I believe that there are some things that are, meaning support. I believe that there are objective moral rules, and that some things are at least absolutely right, and some things are absolutely wrong. So there are some lines you don't cross, even for the so-called greater good, right? So I think that's going to be a dividing line. I think taking of an innocent life of a child would be a line that I think would be fair to say you don't want to cross. And then okay, so back to your point about the bad genes. I guess the point I'd make is that even if it's partly genetic, the people clearly aren't abnormal, right? They're not abnormally predisposed to this. And that means that like their genes aren't particularly bad compared to an ordinary murder or something like that. And then secondly, I don't know if that justifies the killing of the child because of so the first point would be basically that I don't know if it's true empirically, right? That the person who is getting an abortion, or all people who get abortions, are because of that genetically inferior to the average person. Although there is the demographics thing, which we can talk about. I don't know how explicitly we can talk about it, but we can definitely talk about it. And
Just say like interest groups. I find that works better than anything else.
yeah, sure. Or just groups, populations, maybe. If
Learn
that
that
works.
nature. Yeah, AR Chan, what do you think about
populations works. I think we all know what you mean.
Okay.
We all get the
So-
subtext.
Maybe the best way to talk about this would be to talk about the population that we both care about, because there is a population in America that I care about more than other populations.
that?
Right. So that population that we're talking about is also going to be getting abortions, right? That means that within that population, right, there are going to be people there who I feel an obligation to protect, right? People who are a part of my population in the country, and those people are going to be basically getting killed, right? The unborn members of the population are going to be getting killed. So this is sort of a different point. I'm kind of veering off from the empirical stuff a little bit. Hopefully, I'm not rambling too much, but I guess does that point make sense to you, that like if we care about that population, but a policy we're enacting is killing a lot of people in that population, right? Then does that seem like a problem to you? I'm just sort of curious about.
If I could just jump in
Maybe
real
I'll,
quick.
maybe I'll,
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to like help to like structure things. Perhaps we could just continue on like the empirical element for now, and then once I kind of see that there's like a standstill or we've gone far enough with that, then I want to kind of loop back and talk about the deontology versus like a consequentialist
Of
framework.
course you do.
There's a lot to get into there, but I feel like maybe we can just start with like this, just the initial assumption that we're like looking at this from like a harms perspective, and looking just at the empirically what is causing more harm, and just see where that goes for now, and then we can jump back. Does that sound good?
Yeah, yeah. Definitely.
Otherwise,
I'll
there'll be
try to
like one
answer
person
that
or like
portion.
has an essay, and the other person will have to put another essay. So let's just like
No,
I'm
there are
trying to
only
get
a
in,
couple
focus on
points
one
there.
point at a time.
That's okay. So from what I recall, you talked about what was it, your deontologist, so objective morality. I don't agree with that at all. I think genes are the only morality you have, and if you're gone, then your morality is gone with you. You
Okay.
could say, perhaps ethereally, oh, this idea exists outside of me, but physically that's unprovable. And again, like, your ideology isn't going to stand up to a bullet. All that matters is evolution, so on. You can agree that there's a God. I'm not going to debate that with you. I do agree there is a God, but in terms of like, a logical debate, coming down to an agreed upon sort of morality is a result of your physical being, your genetics agreeing with that morality and just sort of coping with it. So I think eventually we'll get into that, because AR Chan says to leave that for later, but that's definitely going to be a point of disagreement. I don't know how you would prove otherwise to me. It's sort of a, kind of gay tactical nihilism on my part, but I don't see it being disproven. I'm not trying to be a bitch here. I don't see it being disproven.
Like I said, we'll get into that, but I want to focus on one point at a time.
Yeah,
and that
I'm
was
just
the-
answering
I'm fine with
his
shelving
first
that
point
for a
really
little
quickly.
bit if you want. Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
for sure. So then what did you say? You said you don't want. Could you just rehash? It was something like you don't want the
Sure.
murder
I'll-
to be in the gene popular, something of that nature.
Oh yeah, I guess like the point I made is that I don't know if the genes, like you made a point about the parents' genes being like bad because they get an abortion, but I don't know if that
Yeah.
necessarily means that that like that, and you're saying that that's going to be bad for the kid, I think was your point. And so my response would
No,
just be
it
that,
was
like
gonna
there
be
are other options.
yeah.
I
Okay.
think there were two things. That the one was the eugenic point, but then the other was that it was bad for the kid, or at least that was how I understood the point.
Yeah, that was just a quick kind of aside. The main thing is that if you care about a certain interest group, you don't want that interest group to have. I think I'm more speaking to your perspective than mine. You don't want that interest group to have, infanticide in it. You don't want people who would otherwise kill their kids if given the liberty to do so, breeding. I think that would be overall harmful to the gene pool of the interest group that we happen to care about. And again, empirically, our interest group, or the interest group we most align with, doesn't get it done as often as other groups. So in terms of a just purely resource perspective, that leaves us more resources. That leaves us less potential for victimization. If you look up, rates of malice in certain interest groups, it's certainly higher than ours. So overall, again, the outcome makes us safer. It leaves more resources for our interest group, and overall, it makes our interest group better if you happen to care about the culture of not having like infanticide, a mother who would kill her own child in our interest group. So I think genetically speaking, in terms of like an empirical outcome, that's how I would answer your question if that's acceptable to you.
You might have a real quick follow-up question.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Because it seems like, so we have multiple populations that do receive abortions, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So what I'm curious about is like, and maybe I have like a kind of a hypothetical here that might sort of flesh out where you stand on this. You seem to think that like it's okay if we have this population that we feel some kind of concrete loyalty to have
Mhm.
some members of that population die if more members of the other population are dying,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm curious, like if you had a situation where, and I'm not going to name these groups, but like you had a population where you had our population in one group, and let's say there were 10 of us, right? And there were 50 of another population. You had a choice where like all 10 of us would die, but the 50 of the other population would die. Would that be a good thing? I mean, would you support that, or would you say
No, because ours would still die out.
Okay.
We're not dealing with 10 and 50. We're dealing with approximately 1 billion versus 7 billion, something of that nature. Hypothetically speaking. Let's make that hypothetical.
I'm not saying that that's all that's there. I'm just saying it's like it's a situation where like it's just a chunk of the population, but you have to sanction the 10 dying, basically.
Okay, if
10
you're
of your
talking,
own dying.
I see what you mean. Yeah, you're talking more of a philosophical thing rather than abortion.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather stick to this context. And again, call me a bitch for it if you'd like. But I think when you have populations we're dealing with, resources are really all that matters for genes for propagation. If you care about your interest group, which we do because we're tribal interest group agents, I guess I'll say instead of another term. It really, if you eliminate competition, eventually your people will recover, your interest group will recover. Mm-hmm. And if you're having eugenic policies imposed even on your own population group, well, then the population group's eventually going to be all the more better for it. You're going to eliminate people who have self-harm tendencies, who have tendencies to not have loyalty to their own people, to their own children, to have a better population that way, eventually in the long term. You can say it's culturally damaging now, it's obviously physically damaging now, but in the long term, if we are losing less of our interest group versus the interest groups that are opposed to us genetically speaking, we're going to be better off for it in the long run.
Yeah, I think just like, I don't want to, because I know AR wanted to move on to some stuff, but I think that this idea of, because I don't think this focus on genetics, I think as like, sort of the main, like this genetic group as being the main group we have. How do I put this? Like this focus on genetics as the root of like our ethical ties with other people. I don't know if that works. It seems like you're getting focused on this group of people in the abstract versus the actual concrete people who are a part of that group. If that makes sense?
No, go ahead and explain it. Like, take your time. I'm not going to bitch about you taking a long time. Just go ahead and explain yourself.
Yeah, sure. That because you seem to believe that the population's genes going on lasts, but at the end of the day, I think I care more about the actual people who belong to that population than I do the genes themselves.
Well, people are a product of their genes, that they're interchangeable.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is that if there's a situation where, again, you don't like the hypothetical, but I think that, if I think of a situation where this population lives on genetically, but everybody who's a part of that population suffers or is tortured or, is miserable, and we'll say it's forever even, right?
Not necessarily so. I don't think that at all.
But again, this is the point of this is to flesh out the intuitions, right? Is that like not forever, but just for a very long period of time, I don't know if I'd will that on a group of people who I should feel loyalty to, right?
I kind of get what you're saying, but it's not like that's not what's happening. I mean, again, I'm dealing more in the practical aspect. You can't suffer forever. You know what I mean? Like, if your
Or
population group
not
happens to
forever,
take a
but
hit, eventually it's going to recover, and then in the long term, whatever group you have loyalty with will win in that regard in the end. That's what I tend to care about. Like, obviously, I don't want people to suffer now. I'm not arguing for people to suffer now. I'm arguing for people to have the liberty to do what they'd like to do, and then I think the outcome is going to again be more beneficial to people who I care about in the end, and then people who are doing these immoral actions aren't going to be around to continue doing them. I think don't interrupt your enemy when they're making mistakes, so to speak.
It seems like one of these point of contentions here, this is something that Rem said, is that like the reason why the mom is having an abortion is because of her genes, and it seemed from Enoch's perspective, he said something about like, oh, this is the mother's choice. So there seems to be a contention about whether or not there's genetic like determinism. Perhaps you wanted to get into that.
Did he cut out for you too, Enoch?
No, I got him. He was saying that one of the main divisions
Reading
is
that, you
genetic
cut out for me.
determinism. Oh.
I was just saying that it seems like one of the main contentions here, related specifically to your point, like kind of, which is kind of like the second point that you were making, Rem. Did he?
Okay, he's back.
Okay. Can you hear us? All right.
Yeah, you just cut out a little bit. I don't know if you guys said it. You were talking about like the difference between me and Knox, like perspective.
Yeah, we were saying that like it seems one of the points of contentions here is whether or not you're a genetic determinist, and whether or not there's like a gene that would compel you to have like an abortion, and whether or not that's a gene that needs to be like rooted out.
I mean, I don't think you need. I mean, you could like, yeah, I guess, yeah. Just if you want a simple answer, if you want a more fleshed out one, I don't think you can find a single snip that leads to like every sort of behavior, but overall, the snips are going to inevitably lead to your behavior. With regard to whatever environment you happen to be part of. So I guess a genetic determinist with like one or two minor caveats, but yeah, if you want to simply say it, then yeah, sure.
God, Oswald. So not Oswald.
Too used to being here.
Michael.
Yeah, I mean. Right. So I don't necessarily.
Said Michael Enoch got all formal with us.
Michael, Dr. Michael Enoch.
Sir Enoch.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I'll put it this way. I don't necessarily. I think that the free choice versus determinism thing is complicated. It's kind of a cop out too, but I'm kind of a compatibilist. I think that free choice is compatible with determinism of some kind, just in general, right? That like there is a cause and effect behind every action. I think where it gets trickier is when you start to suggest that like these immoral behaviors are, because even you even mentioned this too, they're at least partly caused by environment. I think even people who are aware of, again, the genetic differences between interest groups, right? People who are aware of that even would admit that some of it's environmental, right? That environment still plays some role. So, here when we look at variations in how populations behave and then variations within those populations, right? So if we look at our main population that we're talking about here, our population, not their populations, right? And we look at the people in our population who are receiving abortions, right? I think you're going to find a lot of that behavior is probably driven partly by cultural stuff. That would be my guess, right? Although I wouldn't be surprised if the differences between populations are driven partly by genetic stuff, right? Like a lack of foresight, high rates of sociopathy, risky sexual behaviors, which again is going to be driven by a lack of foresight, a low average intelligence, I guess, if that makes sense. So I don't necessarily disagree with the point that that genetics is a factor. I just don't know if it's such a decisive factor that we can say that if a person is getting an abortion, they're not going to like pass on the quote unquote abortion genes, I guess, if that makes sense.
I think it is. Like you can even look at certain ideologies get abortions less than others, and ideologies very heritable. I'm not going to throw studies at you because I think that's kind of unfair. But are you familiar with that? Do you know that?
Yeah, I've heard that ideology is I don't know the exact rate of heritability.
It's like a good correlation. It's not a perfect one, but it's a strong correlation.
I think there's a what's the measurement? I think it's a readability. It's like on a scale of
It's like,
like
0.0
0 to 1.
to
Or,
1. I
yeah.
think it's like 0.6
Yeah.
or 0.7.
Okay, that's pretty high.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's significant. But again, that's not the whole thing. Fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. Shit.
No worries. Take your time.
Yeah, for sure. So you were talking mostly about, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you want like the state of the population to be something that you culturally agree with or morally agree with, not just, you don't want the people to exist. And if it's going to exist in a more limited capacity, you'd rather that capacity like agree with you and your views more, rather than just have a larger group or a group with less competition. Is that true?
I guess I'll put it this way. I don't think, in the same way that for like an individual person, I don't think survival is an end in itself. For a
Okay,
group,
yeah, I
don't.
disagree completely. Yeah.
Okay, this will be interesting. I think for a group, if your society isn't moral, if it isn't good, if it's not livable, then I don't think surviving is necessarily worthwhile.
Okay, yeah.
I think this. Let me just
I'll
interrupt.
just go
real
back
quick.
to your old point, and then I'll speak to that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, unless okay, yeah. Go back to the old point. And then I think all right. It looks like we're ready to move on now to the major.
Yeah,
the
I'll
biggest point of
finish up
contention.
my response to him.
Yeah, I'm gonna be walking a bit, so
Okay, yeah, if you want me
well, hopefully not too much noise. Sorry.
No worries, man. Hopefully, long strands of things don't spontaneously combust like we were discussing before.
Hopefully. Never know.
Actually, maybe hopefully we do hope it happens.
All right, continue.
Kind of come an extension of the debate. So I would say culture is partly genetic and partly environmental. So in any sense that I guess in like a broader sense, like you cannot have a culture you care about if you're not there to enjoy it. And if you agree with me that we're both tribal, we both we're on the same team. That again, any sort of culture can be rebuilt. And I understand you have certain proclivities towards certain behaviors. So do I. But at the end of the day, we are tribal people, and it's a matter of, do you care about the values that your genetics give you? Because again, if you're not here, your values are not here. You cannot think of your values, you cannot feel your values if you are not physically here to experience them. We can leave a God mechanism out of this discussion for now. If you want to go back into it, you think it's not fair for me to take that out, it's fine. But in terms of like physical reality,
I'm not religious, so
okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine then. Yeah, shit. Fuck. Damn it. So, yeah, if you are not here, your culture and the values you care about are not going to be here either, insofar as you experience them and insofar as your people experience them. I think, again, culture can be rebuilt, genes cannot, your people cannot be rebuilt. If you lose them, they're gone. If you lose culture, culture can always spawn because it comes forth partially from a people. In terms of the environment, it has an influence, but I don't think it matters when you're talking about certain interest groups, because those interest groups are there. They happen to own different properties or to be from different districts of certain territories or cities or what have you. But it doesn't change the fact that they're there. They're making a mistake, and we should let them. So if you care about our people, if you care about our interest group, you should see that the people who are opposed to the well-being of our interest group are hurting themselves, and we should not stop them. And the little damage we sustain is actually going to be better for us long term in terms of our physical survival, and so there follows that our possible cultural survival if you happen to care about that. There was one other thing, but I kind of forgot it. It was the point after that you quickly talked about. I think it was more I guess a more morality thing again.
All right. So it sounds
Do
like
you remember it, AR-chan?
I think he was talking about how he didn't think survival
Was it
an
mothers,
end.
like bad genes or something like that?
No, we already talked about that.
Oh, I
think
thought
it
you
was
went back
more,
to that.
I think it was more this, and this is the dividing thing here, kind
Yeah.
of this idea that survival
Is an end to itself. Yeah, we could get into
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
It
absolutely.
sounds like that is the biggest line. It seems that Michael Enoch is concerned over what is moral, and is that like that's like the highest principle for society, and then it seems like Rem is concerned with what is like how to survive, how does a species promulgate. So I guess Michael Enoch, you want to start with like explaining why you think that what you do think about deontology?
Yeah, I mean, so
Explaining
I
your
don't know
position on deontology.
how in depth we want to go, because again, it's like I'm not even that fresh on this stuff, and I don't think we want to go super into like obscure people or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think that like there are moral rules. Those moral rules have to be, at least some of them have to be non-negotiable. They can be, context still matters, right? Like if you have a rule like, always keep your promises, and you do still have to talk about context, right? What the context being like, what promises did you make, right? What what language do you speak, right? That affects, what culture you belong to affects like what's implicit in a promise, stuff like that. But there is still an objective framework that you operate from, and in the same way, if you have a duty for parents to look after kids, well, some of the details might vary based on context, based on like cultural context or your circumstance. But the underneath that, there is an objective moral rule, and there has to be. And that moral rule has to be non-negotiable, right? And I think we would agree on this, right? Like if a parent, and I think you might agree with me on this, right? Like if a parent had a choice between killing their kid and saving maybe 1,000 people in their society, and refusing to kill their kid, and those 1,000 people die, I think we would say, because of their, or maybe killing is not a good example, but like let's say refusing to help, right? Because that's something they're morally permitted to do, right? If they had that choice, then their it would still be wrong. I think we would agree that a parent has a very, very, very powerful moral obligation, and that applies to children who are born and who are unborn. On the point, so that's the first point is just kind of what we talked about with sort of deontological ethics, that there are moral rules, there are sort of constraints on how you pursue certain goals, right? So if you have a goal of a eugenic policy, there are moral constraints on how you pursue that eugenic policy, right? You can't kill innocent people or kill unborn children. You can't encourage parents to kill their children, stuff like that. The second, let's see, what was my second point going to be?
Was like the example you gave with 1,000 kids versus your own kids.
Yeah, but that was sort of part of the first point, just that like you have that overriding obligation that public goods can't override. I think the second point is sort of about why a society exists, right? Whether a society exists just to survive, or a community or some population exists just to survive, or whether it exists to kind of, and I'm going to sound less like a deontologist here and more like a virtue ethicist, to sort of flourish in some sense, right? Whether it kind of matters what that society actually comes to look like, right? And I'm going to say that, like, again, if we draw an analogy to an individual person, if I think about myself in my life, right? If I live my life and I'm a parasite, right? Or I do evil things, or I'm not able to have dignity, right? Then I don't think my life necessarily is worth something, right? Or I don't think my life is necessarily worth living. And so, in the same way, like place has got a lot of background. So if I give maybe a more concrete example, then let's say I have some kind of chronic disease, right? And I need to swap out my organs on a regular. This isn't very realistic, but I need to swap out my organs on a pretty regular basis. And so I start kidnapping people to get those organs, right? And I continue to do this, and I continue to steal people's organs. And I survive, but I'm doing something completely morally reprehensible. I think we would say that, like, my survival isn't worthwhile. Do you want me to, can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You're good.
Do you want me to summarize that a little bit so you can respond to it a little bit more
No,
concisely?
I wrote down like some points I want to hit. I've got Discord open, so I think I've got it.
Cool.
If you want to like go further, you're absolutely you're able to.
No, I think that's about right.
Okay.
You have the floor.
Yep. So for your first point, you say there's an objective morality. I completely disagree. The only objective morality is survival. Again, if you're not here to have morality, your morality is defeated. So that's just point one. I think again we're gonna disagree on that. But again, like any sense of morality, even then, just as an aside, it's evolved. Like something you can look at something really beneficial. Like, would you think that altruism is a good thing? Like morally speaking, would you like
It depends on the context.
that? But like generally speaking, if is me like going out of my way to do something for you, would you like that or would you not like that?
Even there, I think it depends on the context. Like I think altruism can be bad. I think it can be patronizing. I think it can be, you know, let's see. I think it can be.
Could you call it like immoral again? Like we'll not consider the outcomes for the individual. We'll leave genetics aside. Do you think it's moral to want to help somebody?
Yeah, it's a moral impulse.
And again, you could again bring genetics back, and you could say that you going out and helping someone's going to hurt you or possibly hurt them, or you can make up a billion different things. But in general, I think like we like altruism in a society to some degree. Yeah.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah, that's an evolved thing. If it didn't help us, we wouldn't have evolved it. There's tribalism, there's caring about your people, there's caring about your family. If the people who are psychopaths, who didn't have that level of altruism, who would go out and like let's say kill their baby, for example, those genes would not get pissed on. And it's not like evolution has stopped. It's continuing to this day. We have certain pressures and certain options in society that let those genes excise themselves, that let those genes not be selected for. And I think that's a good thing that we're going to. You said you wanted a culture or a society that doesn't have abortion, that doesn't have these sorts of things that you view as immoral. And I agree, I view abortion as immoral. But ironically, the way to get there is to let these people make the mistakes they're making, is to let these genes play out how they're supposed to play, give them the freedom to play out how they're supposed to play. And then in a couple generations, every subsequent generation, you're going to have less and less abortion. Ironically, you are going to have more of what you like if right now you accept less of what you want. So if you care about, again, the well-being of society, a society that doesn't want to kill its own children, you have to let those people out of the gene pool as quickly as possible. Let them leave, and then you will have less child murder in the future. And then you said your second point. Let's see, I have it written down somewhere. Yeah. So the point about like the 1,000 kids versus your own kid, that neglects kin selection. Like you could be, a paraplegic or something, but if you're incredibly intelligent, you could help your tribe and thus help you the genes that you share with them, your kin group. Evolution and loyalty isn't just directly, in terms of your own kids. Like let's say you race mix or something. You're, your kid is less genetically similar to your whole group than you are because they have half genes that are so far separate. It's not exactly a perfect, parallel, but you get the point. Kin selection is a legitimate form of evolution. It's a legitimate form of advocacy for your people. If you're someone who doesn't breed, you can still overall help your own gene pool, even though you haven't passed on your genes directly, because you've indirectly helped your own people's genes propagate. And again, if you care about things in a cultural sense, by allowing abortion now, you're going to have less of it later and thus propagate the certain genes that you care about by not letting the ones that you don't like propagate.
Okay. Did you want to add anything more, Ram, or is that it?
No, we could just keep going back and forth. I think that
Okay.
was kind of long-winded. He can pick what he likes, and we can go from there.
No worries. I know it was not long-winded. I didn't like my analogy, but it looks like it did clarify some differences here, because it seems like, let's see. I'm gonna try to limit this to 2 points and not make it too long-winded, but it seems like going from the most recent thing you said back, right? When you talk about, you seem to start with these populations here, and then work back from there, right? So you justify the family with this population that we belong to, this larger population that shares genes with us, right? And to the point that it sounds like you would say that, like, if I had a mixed race kid, right, then maybe I wouldn't have the same obligation to that kid that I would have to a kid who was, or sorry,
you would have it, but you would have it in a different sense. Like you can look at your kin group, you can still be somewhat tribal to your kin group and help them out. But you can also completely race mix and still have your genes propagated that way. It's just there are two different kinds of selection.
Yeah, but okay, so if we talk about sort of the more, because what, and that gets into the second thing that I think you're doing, that I think a lot of people who aren't big on objective morality do, is that you're sort of smuggling and I don't think this is on purpose or malicious, but you're kind of
absolutely, it's fine.
A moral premise in, anyways.
Well, I'm talking about I'm trying to make you, because I know you come at things from a cultural perspective, so I'm trying to convince you that if you go with my thing, which isn't obviously culture, I'm not going to pretend that actually, I do morally disagree with abortion, but you know what I mean? Like I don't value culture in the same way as you do. I'm trying to say that it's going to help you too. I'm not trying to get you to agree to any premise you don't like or anything of that nature.
Okay. That's kind of not quite the point I was making. The point I was
Okay,
making
my bad.
No worries. The point I'm making is that when we talk about this difference between objective and non-objective morality, and you say that the only morality that exists is genetics, I think that you're kind of smuggling this. So there's this idea of odd and is, right? And you're kind of taking this statement of how the world is, right? That as a matter of fact, if a set of moral rules, let's say, lead to the destruction of a group that adheres to those moral rules, then those moral rules won't exist, and you're jumping to this ought, right? That means that we ought to care about survival, more than these moral rules, right? But I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, right? Like you're claiming that you're not playing a moral game, but you're still making ought claims. You're still making claims that we ought to care about our survival. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I would just quickly say that, like, how could you disprove that? How could you say that something immaterial that's unprovable is worth more than something that's material and provable?
Well, just because it's not provable in the way that there's more than one way to prove something, right? Like you can use sort of a priori reasoning to prove that these moral rules, right? And there's a lot of aspects of philosophy that are devoted to trying to do this.
Sorry, you kind of cut out for me at the very end, Mikey. Could you just repeat that last part? Sorry.
Yeah, and there are a lot of branches in philosophy that try to do this, right?
Do what?
Kant's a big person. Prove that moral rules exist via sort of a priori reasoning.
Oh, okay.
Right, that
gotcha.
they're
Yes.
Okay, and again, I'd say two things to that. Are you finished or no?
Yeah, maybe just one more thing. I'm curious.
Yeah, sure.
Because you seem to be coming at this from what's the word? It is kind of a word that like a lot of Christian people use, but scientism, right? Like you seem to be coming at it from this perspective that like the only kind of valid knowledge that we can have is scientific, right? It's stuff that you can like sort of prove with like a like a study and like a basically a bunch of people in a lab or through empirical observation. And I don't know if I don't really buy into that either. I don't think that's something that like I think most people who believe this they've smuggled in like if you look at this sort of gets into empiricism and epistemology, which is, are you familiar with the idea of what empiricism is versus rationalism or
versus what?
Like rationalism or something in philosophy? Okay. So like in empiricism, I guess just for the audience, in empiricism, there's this idea that every belief go back to some kind of observation. Sort of the problem with empiricism is that, the underlying epistemology itself relies on assumptions that aren't based on observation, right? Like you can't prove here, right? So in sort of
you cut out for that real big guy. What were you saying?
Okay.
You can't prove something.
That you can't prove empiricism empirically, right? So eventually you have to smuggle in these sort of a priori rationalistic ideas about truth. And I think to get back to the point you're making about, why would we favor these kind of abstract moral something you can prove scientifically? Well, it's because the scientific stuff can't answer these ought questions. Science can answer a lot of questions about what actually exists, but it can't really answer questions about what ought to exist, right? Or what the sort of fundamental moral values of society ought to be. Does that make sense to you? That point? I think that's all I have to say to make that point.
Fuck.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, I cut out a little bit, right?
Okay.
Did you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so just your last point, you cut out a bit for me.
Okay. Yeah, so in philosophy, there's this pretty common idea of the ought-is gap. And
David Hume.
Yeah, it's pretty right, but a little bit. And I'm not trying to throw a ton of stuff at anyone, but
no, it's all right. I'm familiar with some of the stuff.
Okay. And I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Did I cut out again?
No, you're good. You're good. I just interrupted.
And I think that like kind of what's happening here is when you say that like this sort of that these moral rules are abstract and metaphysical and not provable. What you mean is that they're not provable in like a narrow kind of scientific empirical sense. But I don't think that's like the only way that we get truth or that we get knowledge, right? And that moral rules can't come from an observation of like facts about the world, basically. But to make your point about survival, you have to make an assumption about the world, about how the world ought to be, right? You have to smuggle that in, and that underlying assumption is just as intangible and just as abstract as the moral rule I'm
Did you catch all that? You catch all that, Rem?
Yeah, I caught 99% of it. I feel kind of bad. My answer's pretty short. Basically, like, ought versus is doesn't really matter. Like, the ought is going to be influenced by your genetics as well. Again, like, you could look at something like altruism. If you think you ought to be altruistic, you think you ought to care about people, that's a result of your genes. There's nothing else provable that's going to disprove physical reality. So if your brain thinks a certain way, it thinks a certain way. It's what you are, and that that culture can still be genetically selected for because it's through genetics that arose. It's not a matter of me saying things should be a certain way because I've arrived at these things, ethereally. It's because me as a physical entity, my brain operates on this level. I think that because I'm knowledgeable of my own tribalism, I'm knowledgeable it's going to help our people, and I have the genetic desire to help our people, I'm going to operate as a physical agent to do so. It's not really a thing of me separating myself from myself physically because my thoughts come from my physical being.
Can I just ask, Michael Enoch seems to be entering into his home. Let me just temporarily put this guy on mute real quick. Oh.
I'm choking on a nut right now, man. I've been popping peanuts the whole time.
It's all good.
Just busting nuts on myself.
My bad.
It's all right. I wanted to ask the
How was
Rim.
the walk, by the way? Oh, I guess he's muted.
Stop being polite.
Fine.
The audience says to stop being polite. This is a very respectful debate. I wanted to ask Rem, do you think that everyone has the same obligation, or is this something that you just care about, like, for yourself? In the sense that, like, everyone has an obligation to care about the survival of their species, or are you just saying that, oh, I care about the survival? Are you kind of trying to quantify over, like, saying that, like, because that's kind of the difference between saying something is just, like, a subjective preference and something is something that is objectively necessary for everyone?
You mind saying the first sentence again? You cut a bit.
Like,
I heard the last bit. I didn't hear your initial question part of it.
Like, do you think that
I heard your explanation, not your question.
Do you think that everyone, since you say that, like, the most important thing is, like, survival and genetics, do you think everyone should care about survival and genetics? Like, is this something that you objectively believe?
Okay, yeah. I think people can have, like, certain, they can be convinced, and to the extent that you can be convinced is because you're genetically able to be convinced, and that another physical agent can convince you of something. So again, I'm not separating the ought from myself. I have an ought functionally, but not ethereally. So if I can go and activate these thoughts in other people I care about, people I don't care about, you can talk about really anything and convince people. But it's because they have the genetic propensity to be convinced. If they didn't, then you could not ever convince them. So I think, functionally, yeah, I have an ought, but it's the result of nothing really more in principle than me existing as I exist. I think that's the same for anything. So I care about the things I care about because of my genes and my environment.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think
you want to answer that or respond?
My bad.
Enoch?
Yeah, so I think like
how was the
that's
walk?
kinda-
You never answered.
Oh, sorry about that.
No being nice. No being nice. I'm just kidding.
Shut up, I'm Canadian.
Oh, okay. That explains why this conversation's going so well. So yeah, it was the only problem was that there were a lot of cars, so I was worried that was coming through on the voice chat.
Oh no, okay. I thought you were gonna say you were worried about getting hit,
Yeah.
but like it's probably light out or something where you're at.
All right.
No.
A darker interest group or something.
No worries about
Very
that.
visible.
Not right now.
All right.
Oh, not visible at night though. No,
All right.
I mean, just smile.
Yeah.
All right, just
They won't smile back though.
Michael Michael Enoch. So we're basically just to, like, refresh here since we kind of got off topic, talking about is genetics everything? Is that the only thing we care about? And is that the only lens in which we should have a world conception?
Yeah, I think again, just getting back to I don't know if you're really answering the question, or maybe I'm not phrasing it well, because I think, like, just to get back to it, like, I would agree that you can find a cause, right? You can find cause and effect when it comes to, people's behavior, but that doesn't really take away the idea of morality, I don't think, right? Or it doesn't have to. And there is a school of thought in philosophy called compatibilism, right? That, like, in some sense, even if your actions are predetermined, you can still be held responsible for them, right? It still flows from who you are as a human being, or as a person. A good analogy that this came from the Stoics, that I've heard people use, is that if you have a boulder, right, and it's rolling down a hill, well, in some sense, it was caused by, even if it's predetermined, even if they're outside forces. In some sense, it was caused by the boulder itself, right? The boulder itself, caused its rolling down the hill to happen. Its shape caused it, right? If it's round versus if it's square, or if it's some shape that doesn't want to roll down the hill, or doesn't roll down the hill as readily, right? So just because you can point to an outside force doesn't mean that there isn't some sort of internal assent on the part of the person who's acting, right? So I think you can still have some degree of moral choice, even with determinism, which seems to be, like, the point you're making seems to be that because we can find these genetic causes or these cultural causes, that means that there's no choice whatsoever. I don't know if that's really true.
Yeah, this is where determinism gets, like, kind of gay and cucky. Because it's like you might as well,
So you're
before every
basically saying you're
sentence.
gonna cuck right now? Is that what you're telling us?
Yeah,
You're
I
cucking
have
live
been
on
busting
air?
nuts on myself, like I've been saying. I've been eating nuts all night. But yeah, no, like, this is where it gets, like, really, really stupid. But I'm stupid in the sense it's not satisfying, but intelligent in the sense that it's not logically disprovable. And I think I think it's the most, the closest I can understand the truth to be. You can preface every statement you make by saying, the collection of genetics, or the soul, or whatever has brought me to this point, is saying this. And again, that's, like, really stupid. Functionally, it's not practical, so people don't do it, obviously. But I think you neglect to understand that, or you neglect to take that into account of what you're saying. By saying people have free choice, and by saying people can act morally, and so forth, you're assuming a lot. And it's not like I'm going to break you down and say, what is moral, blah, 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 because that's gay. I'm a very polite person. I don't think we have time for that either. I'm not trying to, to go down, like, a Semitic rabbit hole or something. But we know things to be good, but we know things to be good because we evolved to like those things. Again, people like seeing punishment because we're tribal animals. We evolved to like seeing punishment. We evolved to not let people who are going to genetically disadvantage us prosper. We evolved to root out liars. We can read faces because we want to root out deception, because if people with deceptive genes or bad genes pass it on, it harms us. We don't pass on our genes. We don't pass on our kin group genes, and so forth. And then to bring it back to abortion, again, you have bad genes. They're being rooted out, and I think that's a good thing. Not in, like, in the same satisfactory manner as, like, punishing a criminal, because obviously the baby did nothing wrong, but you are punishing genes, or you're allowing genes to punish themselves, and so you're going to have a better genetic outcome. People like seeing moral actions because we're predisposed to liking those moral actions. If you have, like, a niche sort of morality, again, you can separate yourself from your physical self if you like, for practical reasons, you're going to be against your group, and those people are generally not going to like that. Like, you can come up with any cope you want to justify a sort of worldview, or cultural, or theological, or moral sense, but it's just you agreeing with your own genes in the end. You're just kind of going about in a roundabout way, which I think I'm avoiding by taking a more physical based path.
All right, let's give Ian. Michael Enoch. So basically, Michael Enoch, let's give you one more response there, and then we'll do some maybe closing statements, and then we can go to Q&A. Sound good?
I thought you wanted to cover some of the actual genetics behind it too. That might be good to get into, because I think that
Sure, if you want.
I think we are kind of at an impasse sort of here.
Yeah, that's why I
What
wanted
is
to,
it
like, maybe one
about
more
the
response.
genetics though? Like, I'm not talking about a specific SNP leading to this. I'm
Sorry.
talking about just like the general rule of evolution. Like, people pass on their traits to their kids. I don't think you have to get more in depth than that. Like, I don't have an abortion gene ready for you.
Yeah, no, that's not what I mean. I'm in not a good situation right now with Okay.
Heard something fall.
I feel like every time I'm being very rude. Next time I'll have a better setup, a more consistent
Wear a bow
setup.
tie, man. Be like anime rightist, buddy. This is
That's
so
true.
disrespectful, man.
Well, you can't even see my face, so it's even more disrespectful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's not shrouded in any sort of like foreign garment, is it?
No, it isn't.
Okay, good.
Are you wearing a lab coat by any
You
chance?
wearing a
Ron?
tiny hat?
No, but I have very curly hair, which is not always a good look.
All
Yeah,
right.
man, you should get that rich people hat. I see rich people wearing this like really niche hat all the time.
All right, funny, bro. Never
Yeah, I don't
heard
know
that
what's up
joke
with it.
before. All right,
I'm talking about Jews.
Michael Enoch, continue, please.
Yeah, so
Gotta
I mean,
keep the show on the road.
what I mean about the genetics is more like are there? I feel like there are other policies, given the like seriousness of what we're talking about. That we're talking about, you know, the state sanctioning the mass murder of unborn children, effectively. Then, I think and I think we might even agree, or the mass killing of unborn children. Right? We agree that that's what this is. Right? The state sanctioning and maybe even subsidizing it in some sense. Then, you know, it seems like there are other things you can do that would do a better job of achieving the goals that you want when it comes to, you know, sort of your genetic health of your society, right? Like, you know, reestablishing barriers between interbreeding between these groups, like reestablishing sort of traditional, you know, encouraging people to have kids within the context of a traditional family, stuff like that, right?
You could do both though. Like,
Right,
this
but
is
one
kind of
is-
like the sorry, I don't mean to be rude at all. It's just,
Sure.
you know, people can see a point they don't like, but see the outcome is good, and then say, well, why don't you do this to get there instead? You could do both. It's like people saying, don't punish petty criminals, go after the big billionaires who are bringing in populations. That, you know, you could do both. You could come at things from two different things to achieve better results. Like, I'm not going to be opposed to giving families more money to raise kids, in addition to having the option for abortion being there, because both of those policies are going to benefit us.
Yeah, and
Genetically, anyway.
I'm saying getting back to the sort of moral weight of what we're talking about. That given you have these other policies available to you that don't involve doing this kind of questionable sort of thing, then why would you do the questionable thing instead of those sorts of policies? Like, do you think is it just that effective at reducing the size of these populations? Is it I guess that's what I'd be getting at mostly.
I think
versus-
yeah, like they're, as you said, I think what is it in the States, like 1 million a year or something like that. Do you know or no?
I don't know the exact number, but it's pretty high, and it does vary between populations. I've heard people say that some of
we
these populations are much
certain-
lower than
yeah. Yeah, well, there you go. It's obviously
I think
very effective. And again, I'm not going to oppose you on any sort of positive grounds of saying like giving money to newlywed couples or helping to subsidize children of groups we care about is a bad thing. I think that's a very moral thing, and I fully support that. I'm not going to be against you on that.
But I mean, do you think that there would be things that you do that would be effective than this? Like I mean, immigration control would be something.
Yeah,
that would
like
be
there are
more
things that
effective.
would make me feel much more better about than arguing for something as grim as this, but I can't argue with the results, which I think is, again, like the difference between you and me is like you want to have some sort of objective moral code beyond genetics, and I want that too, but I can't think of one that, again, that would defeat the genetic argument, so I won't.
Again, okay, and just another clarifying question. I mean, if
Sure.
you accept that, I mean, do you think that the killing of an unborn person is the same as the person
Who's what?
Yeah, you kind
the
of cut
person
out
who's
at the
been
end.
born? Do you think the killing of
Do they
somebody
have no? It's killing a human life. If it can feel pain, it's bad on that ground. It's bad because you've snuffed out some sort of innocent life. That's the second one. And the third is the person conscious? No, the person has never had
Okay.
any sort of consciousness, and so you're not taking away something they've had. So I think it's less bad on those grounds, but it's still bad. It's still killing someone.
Would you still be willing to have the state take lives of? I don't want to. Maybe this isn't the best question. I don't know if this is the fairest question to ask. Maybe I won't do that then, because that's not really this isn't really a fair question to ask. If it were just us, you have to fix. I think it'd be a fair question to ask.
Yeah, if it's more
I'll
like
just
vulgar
leave
for
it.
the streamer, so you could ask me later. Like, I'm not opposed to talking. You're a nice guy.
Cool. Do we have anything else? So you wanted to get into questions?
Yeah, I thought there was gonna be more, but all right, yeah, let's go to closing statements, and then I'll go to questions from the audience.
I don't really have much to say. Like, I think I fleshed out my arguments pretty well there. Like, abortion is it's a beneficial evil. There are sorts of evils that can be beneficial in the long run, and this is one of them.
Okay, and Michaelina?
Yeah, I think just rehashing what I'm saying earlier, and hopefully we'll get to talk about fine questions, but you know, you can't. I don't think you can get these moral rules. I don't think you can get descriptive claims about.
You keep cutting out, big guy.
Do I? Okay. I don't think you can get these claims about how the world ought to work from these descriptive claims that you get from science. I think that there are sort of objective moral rules that you kind of have to follow, and that those rules don't disappear when there's some kind of results you want to get out of acting in a certain way. And then I think that, like, the bonds between parents and children, and the state has an obligation to protect children from their parents when they try to kill them. Maybe that's not fair to.
No,
I
it's
didn't bring
fine.
that up.
I genuinely, like,
All right.
morally speaking, I like you.
Thank you guys
I like that.
for joining us. Joining me today. Let me now get the audience. If you want to join the voice chat, you're more than welcome to. Let me see if I have anyone like waiting in the waiting room here. I can just get in. And then you're welcome to join the chatting room and ask a question. Otherwise, you can ask the question in the chat. I see one right now. Someone asked, have things gotten better since we legalized abortion?
When did we, like, what country are you talking about?
I guess he's referring to America.
When did that happen in America?
What was Roe v. Wade was the 70s, I believe.
Then there was a second decision that broadened a lot.
Yeah.
Oh no, but that's probably because America was, like, subverted and culturally decayed along. Like, our people there have been absolutely demonized and turned into self-hating, self-loathing. Like, but abortion is like, it's ancillary to that. Like, a culture that doesn't want to protect itself is going to have its weakest members weeded out, unfortunately. The environment has changed such that, you know, the genes are going to activate in maladaptive people and get rid of them. It's unfortunate. So no, things haven't gotten better, but would getting rid of it make things better? No, it would actually make things worse. Again, for genetic reasons, you would have different groups that want to harm our people's well-being, or interest groups' well-being, having more influence and more power over us.
Okay. Did you want to say anything, Michael Enoch, on that question? All right. I think I covered. Let me know if I didn't get you in. I think I got everyone in though. I know there's some people who are waiting to get into the Discord. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries. Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, there's been a general shift from a pro-natalist, and I mean, I'm not religious myself, but I think that, you know, on a societal level, it's better to have a religious society than a non. And I think there's been a shift from a pro-natalist society that protects its most vulnerable members and does that via the law, right? To a society that is anti-natal, nihilistic, and doesn't do that. So, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. Although I don't think that's the main. You do kind of have to take these as they come, these issues as they come, and be willing to isolate them, because there are going to be things that, like, progressives are going to support that aren't necessarily bad. But, you know, in general, the trend's been worse. And I think that there is probably a connection between people's willingness to, again, betray. Like this, just lack of loyalty, this lack of a feeling of responsibility for the people who you're in charge of, right, and who you gotta look, who you have a tie of loyalty to. Whether that tie of loyalty is the tie between a mother and her kid, or the tie between two people who are part of the same community, the same nation, the same population, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
So I think that there is kind of a connection there.
All right, thank you. Dumb Trick asks, Rem, and he tells me I have to ask this in the Jesse Lee Peterson voice. Let me do my best here. Rem,
Oh, base.
why do you love black people? Or no, do you love black people? Do you love black people, Rem?
That left yesterday. I think he loved black people.
Okay.
No.
No, the answer is no.
I don't have anything. I don't want to hurt him, but but I don't love him. Like,
Okay. Straightforward enough, unlike most of the people on Jesse Lee Peterson's show who kind of dance around that question. Let's see. I saw another question. Oswald wanted to ask, and I welcomed, again, anyone who wants to join the voice chat is more than welcome to. He asks.
We're very nice.
He asks here, ask Ram why he is trying to justify vacuuming children out of their mother's wombs.
Because not doing so would lead to higher crime.
Well, we're
and
trying
less
to-
killing of our people.
We're trying to be polite about this here and talk about
I
it
have a-
as neutrally as we can.
Alright,
if
Oswald
what's
and
up, Oswald
Tyler.
being sucked out of there, can't feel it. That's where I'm alright with that.
How
Again,
can
I
you-
don't want it to happen, but again, like the benefits of allowing those babies to be killed are just going to save more of our people in the long run.
Alright, Oswald.
How can you justify and want to propagate family values in a nation while simultaneously allowing abortion to take place? Isn't that the antithesis of family values, destroying them before they're even here?
Yeah, but ironically, it makes it work because you'd have those people not breeding, and thus the people who care about family values, the values that you espouse, that you seem to care about, would be propagated more so. So if you let
So you
these
think
people
by-
make these mistakes, then you're going to get the society you want later on.
Okay, so you think that's demonstrably true in countries like America, where since the legalization of abortions, family values have gotten stronger then?
No, I don't think it's a perfect parody. Like, you can't take one issue and say this is the whole reason for it, but I think you look at, like, ideological, what would you say, what's that? You pass on ideology at, like, a 0.6 or 0.7 rate. So if people who are super anti-abortion don't get abortions, if people who do like abortion keep getting it, then you're going to have less people getting abortions in the future because those traits are passed on genetically.
So if there's no other external factors, you think that a pro-abortion nation would become more pro-family?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting answer. Any other questions, Oswald?
No, that solves it.
Okay. Rocket, did you want to ask a question?
Monsieur Rocket.
Well, yeah, I had a bit of a question. So it seems to me you're making the argument that the ends justify the means. So I mean, you could achieve the same thing by, I don't know how to phrase this correctly, eliminating a certain population if that's your goal. If you're saying the ends justify the means,
You could have
right?
picked any other word, bro.
Yeah, so basically he's asking why not just go full genocide mode?
He's asking, like, if you could teleport people to a place of eternal happiness forever, where they'd be happy and loving and all caring, would that be more beneficial for your people left on Earth? Yes. Would it be moral? No, but again, like, the only morality that really is going to win out at the end of the day, and it doesn't make me happy
Yeah,
to
there
say
is
it, I'm
abortion.
arguing for it, but the only morality that's going to win out is the one that exists.
Okay, so what do you say though that
Can I?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Michael Enoch. Yeah, sorry.
I don't
should
wanna-
let Michael Enoch answer the last one too. My apologies for that. Continue.
Oh, which one should I? Okay, I'll let's see. I'll answer that and then I'll ask my question because I wanted to put a question that I put earlier another way.
Mhm.
I think, and hopefully we'll go one by one so it's fair and you can have a chance to respond to everyone. So what was the question again? The question you were
If you
responding
could
to?
teleport everybody to a place of eternal happiness such that your own interest group is the only one left, would that be moral?
It's not exactly the question. The question was more.
Yeah, if you
the
could do that,
ends
but somehow
justify
have
the
it as an
means,
immoral
and
action.
if
we'll
you
say.
just wipe out the whole population, wouldn't that do the
Jesus
same thing?
Christ, this is off YouTube.
Well, I mean,
Yeah, no.
I'm not the one taking the ends justify the means position.
Bro, I had my optics good today, man. You fucked up.
I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from.
I wore a suit. What are you doing?
But that is kind
Yes,
of like
yes, I do.
the frame of the question.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so I thought there was a question from the chat.
So I just realized I was away from my the microphone I used. So let me repeat that real quick. Actually, probably shouldn't repeat
Don't.
that.
Yeah, don't. We heard it.
So we have people that are getting transported to a place of eternal happiness, and I think that this kind of would be again somewhere we would disagree. I don't think that would be more, and that was kind of the point I was trying to make earlier. Is that it seems like when we talk about we're going to use abortion to deal with the demographic problem, we're kind of getting the transporting them to the eternal state of happiness thing without the taboo, right? Because it's already been normalized. So that's kind of like it seems like a way to kind of like hide or obscure the kind of the sketchy stuff that would actually be going on that we want to actually avoid. Because I at least think, and I think most people here think that different populations still have different populations have a right to exist. Every population has a right to exist in their own distinct sort of sphere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
So,
Like personally, I'm not morally, for abortion or for, being mean to people. We'll say, but I'm just looking at the outcome and saying, is the outcome beneficial? Yes, yes, it is.
but if you're not
The one
for it,
delivering
then,
abortions, sucking babies out of wombs. I think that's horrible, but I'm going to allow it.
I'm just curious, what is your threshold of like when something becomes more beneficial in terms of utility?
Like, are you
that it
talking? Did you cut out?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I get my question. My follow-up question would be, where exactly is your threshold of when like something, the utility of something outweighs like the moral, the moral problems it entails?
It's going to be personal to me, so it's whatever my propensity towards disgust allows me to see or to do.
Okay. Did you want to answer that as well,
do you think that
Michael?
I think I have just more questions. I feel it feels like it's 20 questions for you, but hopefully
No,
not
it's
too
alright,
bad.
boys. I like you guys.
Okay. So I guess the problem with this idea, so you keep falling back on this idea of sort of subjective morality, right? And I think the problem with this idea that it's just sort of your own subjective threshold is that we kind of live in a society, and what other people's values do affect us. So it's not just like a personal, oh, my values are this, my values.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have to be able to get other people to adhere to our values, and that means at some point that means actually convincing them that those values are right. And practically, I don't see how you can do that if it's just your disposition.
I disagree. Like I've been very convincing to people in a lot of capacities. You change their behavior through logic. If they're able to be convinced, it's because your genetics were able to convince their genetics. Yeah, it's like I understand what you mean. Like you don't want a society where killing your babies is celebrated or good. But again, ironically, the way to get to there is to let those people that think it is good, that think it is normal to go and murder their own children, to do so such that they don't pass on those genes and pass on that culture. You can have a culture of like permissiveness about it. And any sort of culture can be rebuilt, but your genes cannot be rebuilt.
Okay.
Your
and
people cannot be.
Yeah. And that's sort of the second problem I have with what you were saying is that you're saying that when we talk about this idea that, okay, the values don't survive, the society doesn't survive, the group doesn't survive. But again, if you're breaking the rules to survive, then values haven't survived in the first place, right?
What rules are you talking about?
The rule of not killing unborn children, for example, right? Like if you're breaking that rule for the sake of,
But we're not. We're letting bad people do it.
Okay, but I mean, you're via the state, right? The state is through inaction or action, right? It's either allowing it to happen, actively supporting it happening, right?
Yeah, sure.
It happening.
Yeah, we're being permissive towards that. Yeah.
And if you're advocating for keeping this stuff legal, you are acting in a way. You're acting, right? Like you're actively encouraging it.
Potentially, like morally, I don't feel good about it, but I also don't feel bad about it because I'm not the one doing it. I'm just looking at the end result, what it's going to be. And again, we're not in a society of just our people. We're not building a society for our people because we don't even control the societies that our people live in. We have to look at what's in front of us. What kind of society are we in? What population and interest groups are in the society? And is allowing this policy to continue going to be more beneficial for our people's survival? And then through that, is it going to be possible to rebuild the sort of culture that you might subjectively like? And yes, with abortion, absolutely.
Okay. Is it alright if I go on ask BC if he has questions?
Yeah, sure. I
Yeah,
think I
good.
said all I had to say.
Okay. Base
Could I just ask you, like, what is it that
sure,
you
yeah.
want to, like, how do you practically think you would preserve these values while acting, like, against their propagation? Like, by forcing people who have the propensity and like, the desire to harm people, like, force bad people to breed, how are you going to get a better outcome?
Well, I don't think you're forcing them in every sense. I think you're forcing them if they bring it. I think it's when the person comes into the equation. So I'm not religious. I'm not against contraception. I'm not against other steps being taken to prevent this stuff from happening. Prevent certain people who aren't very good at seeing ahead from having kids. But I think that the main things would be kind of, I'm going to sound like a Christian conservative here, but just reestablishing traditional
Epic.
family values and discouraging even, frankly, things like promiscuous sex and out of wedlock birth, stuff like that. I think that would go ways towards
But again, don't you
towards being kind of improving the
like,
situation.
if you value that tradition, if you want a mother to care about her kids, why would you take resources away and take space away from her, like mothers like that, to raise kids they genuinely care about, rather than, a woman is a pejorative term, we'll say, and wants to murder her own baby. Why would you make that woman be a mother and pass on?
You don't think things change when the baby is born?
You're not.
I think to an extent they can, but in principle, I would rather have mothers who want to protect and love their children rather than mothers who at any point would consider.
I think that would
Alright,
desensitize
I have to.
the women.
Sorry, I
to
have
abortion.
to
I
interrupt
think
here.
we should.
The debate
do like one.
is between the two people. So if you have questions, just let me know, and I'm more than happy to bring you in. If that's the question, I want to keep it like somewhat structured. Otherwise, things can fly off the rails, and we'll have 6 different people trying to talk at once. So
Based.
If you guys want, we could maybe, and if everyone is cool with it, we can maybe continue talking for a little bit, have like some structured questions from the chat, and then sort of let the conversation evolve naturally later. But
I have structured questions to this exact point right now. If you want me to jump in now, and then I'll leave.
is that okay with the 2 debaters?
No, it's
Okay
not
with
okay. Fuck them. No, it's okay. It's okay.
No, it's not okay.
Alright, VC's, you got the green light. You can ask your questions.
All right. So so just so one thing that the pro-abortion side was saying is that almost it's an interesting eugenics argument, but the idea of we allow people who are pro-abortion to have abortions because then their genetic predisposition to want abortions will not survive, or will survive fewer in the next generation because their kids won't be alive. It's interesting, but if that's true, then I would think you're placing a lot of belief in that the pro-abortion sentiment is genetic. If that were the case, how did it ever come about? Since the past 1,000 years of Western civilization has been anti-abortion, how did it ever come about? And the answer is that it came about because of propaganda from society that was pro-abortion, not from genes. The greatest generation of the 30s, 40s, when they were raising the boomers, they weren't pro-abortion, but all of a sudden the boomer generation became very much pro-abortion. That wasn't a genetic thing. That was because of social pressures and propaganda. So how would allowing abortion reduce the future abortions or pro-abortion sentiment in the population when social stigma and propaganda is the main way that it facilitates between generations?
No, because you're wrong. Like, you even kind of admitted it towards the end of your sentence. You said that culture and propaganda towards, anti-family values, anti-white values,
I
is
didn't say
being pushed.
white.
Okay, I'm saying white. You know, pushing this on it because I care about our people. I don't want our people to have this. I don't want the propaganda to be against. You know, you look at all these advertisements. It's always, oh, the child-free life is great. And it shows a white woman. You know, enjoy yourself. Don't have kids. Don't care about your people and your future. You're right. There is a contrived push against family values, and that does push people to get abortions. But that activates whatever gene is in them that is willing to go out and do that. To do that. I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think abortion is a moral thing. It's beneficial for us in the short term. It's harmful to us in the short term, but in the long term, it will be beneficial to allow this. And again, you're not just looking at our population, which I care about. You're looking at other populations, and allowing them to have this done is going to create a more safe environment for our interest group. So I would agree with you that culture is being pushed on us, that it's a degenerate form of culture that's ultimately hurting us in the short term. But
so where was
genetic
this gene
too.
in the 20s? Where was this gene in the 20s?
You didn't have
10s,
access
18,
to
90s?
abortion. You to have a
Exactly.
woman be able to kill her kid. It's sort of like this. What would you call it? It's like an actualization of hypergamy. If a woman isn't in a good spot to raise a kid, well, she's going to want to be in a good spot to raise a kid. There are a whole bunch of variables you could throw out there to why a woman would logically not want to have a kid at this moment, and how those genes, you know, just there wasn't an option to have it, and so women didn't have it. But now there is an option to have it. So those people that would ever have the propensity in any circumstance to kill their own kid willingly are going to be bred out. I think they're not putting enough emphasis on the genes being there to begin with, because human action is derived from genes. Like in certain different environments, they'll actualize differently, but they are still there, and now they're being bred out.
But then this genetic display. So the implication of that then is that for thousands of years, we had a culture that was overriding a possible instinct in parts of our population to kill our children.
Culture and a lack
that's
of
what you're saying.
availability.
Can you point to any genes by which that's the case, or are you
No, I
going
can't
off?
list a bunch of snips for you, but I can list like very obvious human breeding patterns and say that.
Okay, but
it's human
so
breeding
now
patterns that lead to human action.
what I'm saying is that breeding patterns and attitudes about abortion changed almost exclusively in a one generation jump. Can you name me another genetic attitude that has ever occurred for in history, where it literally went from one generation? The boomers were far more anti-family, or pro-abortion, pro-divorce, all these things that are anti-family values compared to their parents. Can you name me another thing?
Like I agree with you completely on cultural shifts being pushed on us by subversives. I don't disagree with that. I think what you're saying there.
Okay, so then allowing this abortion without changing, so allowing abortions among these people, it won't just be
foreign
if
idea
the culture,
to us, and it's
if the culture doesn't change, it won't allow. If the culture doesn't change.
Sorry, you cut out, bro. You mind repeating?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
That's
I was able to hear you. I think that was just Ram.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was saying if you don't change, so you're saying though we should allow it because the people who will avail of it will then be bred out over time, and I'm saying no. The social and culture and the propaganda, by allowing it, will regardless of the genetic makeup of the people, will continue to do that. And I mean, this is getting away from whether or not the act is moral or not. It's completely immoral, and you're probably going to hell for advocating it. But but regardless of that, I mean, even by your logic of we will get rid of abortion by allowing it because of the genetic side of it, I think that's completely fallacious too, because the environment and propaganda of today, and that will only continue, will promote more maybe people who don't have this gene that you think exists into being pro-abortion.
How does it not exist? If people are behaving in a certain way,
you just told me you couldn't think of any.
I can't think of an exact.
Okay. Let's Ram.
So
answer the question.
Human behavior is a result of genetics. Like if you could fly, you could fucking fly because of your genetics. You can't because you're human.
It's not 100%.
What are you talking about?
We already kind of got into like the genetic determinants.
If I take away your brain, can you think? Can you act? because
No,
it's
but
a genetic
but if you took
physical
if you took
reality.
away the
are
if you
what
took
you
away
are
the
because
universe,
you are.
if you took away the universe, you wouldn't be able to act either. So it's
Yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
saying
The
it's
universe is physically real. You are
Mike,
physically
I have
real.
a
Your
follow-up
actions are
question,
coming
Ram.
from
We're-
physical-
we're-
Yeah,
you're,
Okay,
you're,
shh,
you're going way off the track.
Blood sport.
No, it's
You're going
exactly
way
what
off
you're
topic.
saying. You're saying that
yeah,
genetics don't-
you noodle arms. Okay. All right, I have a follow-up question. It seems that Rem, you've acknowledged that there is some element of like propaganda to it. So the question I would ask then is, why don't we just change the propaganda, get rid of all the, try to change the cultural stigma, and then take away the
Exactly.
availability of abortions, and then the gene won't, the sleeper gene won't activate.
Yeah, the gene won't
So-
even matter.
Okay,
If
all right.
it
Two
won't
things
even
to
matter.
that. Number one, I agree with you. If you could do that, I'd fully support you in it. Number
Oh, well,
two,
that's
you're not
awesome.
talking about a population I completely care about. You're talking about just, on the ground, things are different. It's not just a group of people that I care about. It's a group of people that are anti our well-being. An interest group, several interest groups that are shooting themselves in the foot or the fetus, if you'd like, at higher rates than ours, which is ultimately benefiting us.
Okay, so the follow up to that is you're not just for it eugenically in by breeding out people who are pro-abortion. You're for it eugenically in that you want your enemies to be bred out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's abhorrent and disgusting.
I think we almost
Good
all
for you,
of us
pal.
here believe that, but
Enjoy hell.
trying
Enjoy
to
Detroit.
to differentiate between motions here in the debate. Let's try and do our best to do
Yeah, we're
that.
Is there a
trying to-
difference between the two?
But I appreciate
Maybe hell has the
input.
technology to light a few more fires.
the input for. Thank you, VC, for the input. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have any more questions. I have to change my laundry, but
Let's go. Let him fight.
Michael Enoch. Michael Enoch. I will let you
Yeah, I
respond. I'll let you do a little bit
Okay.
talking. I trust you, big guy. And,
Yeah, I'll try to-
You better not burn down this whole server.
Do you want me to? Do you want me to moderate this?
If you
'Cause
can,
I-
yeah, if you have the power to mute people, I give you
Actually, hold up. I
permission.
gotta take a piss. I'll be right back.
Alright.
Okay.
Maybe we should wait then. All right, commercial break.
No, yeah,
break.
anime. But before you go, you had exactly my entire point. We could just go back to the
1920s.
culture that we had, and then any gene shift wouldn't matter. I mean, can you name me another thing where a genetic thing happened that caused one generation to be completely different from its previous generation?
Yeah.
Genes take a
Fluoride in
long
the
time.
water.
Genes take a
Michael,
long
you know,
time to.
You need to ask, and I was going to, but you need to ask him why he believes in genes, and he'll say the science because of science or whatever. Then say like, okay, but why do we trust the scientific method? And eventually you'll like force him to.
You're gonna get
develop some
so
abstract
lost in the
principle.
I'm just gonna have to call him. I'm just gonna have to call him. Eventually.
Oh,
You're gonna
what?
get so lost in the weeds that you're gonna be like so far away from the abortion argument.
I
at
just
that
realized
point.
I was talking away again from my microphone.
Well, that's
I
kind of
keep
what we're trying
forgetting.
to avoid. Like, I feel like when we got into like more detailed stuff, because I think what's kind of happening,
Mhm.
50 lampshades here is is more oriented towards like STEM stuff, and I'm more oriented towards philosophy stuff, and we're kind of like where I don't want to push it too far into the weeds with philosophy stuff. 'Cause
Push
I'm
it.
guessing,
Push it, bro.
right?
You have to do.
And
You
it
have to
sounds like
show
we're
the
putting too much
supremacy
on
of the
that.
metaphysics to physics,
Right.
bro. You can't
We already
have
know it's
physics or
true.
metaphysics.
But also
already know
by
it.
this
This kinda
same
came up,
token,
too.
like by the same token, that
A lot of this stuff came
can
up
be
though too in the
it-
debate.
it could be used for any argument that you could just say, okay, so I'm against suicide, so we should promote suicide because people who have a genetic predisposition to
Promote it.
suicide.
No, we should allow people who are going to harm us to commit
He's
suicide.
back. Okay.
Really?
All right.
Yeah.
Break
Really?
Yeah.
over.
Oh my
Um,
god.
Would you rather someone who's going to harm you commit suicide or not
No,
do so because it's
I
immoral
don't
to
think
commit suicide?
I think suicide people harm themselves.
I think
Not
a
other people.
fundamental
Okay,
disagreement
well,
here
groups
is
exist,
about
and groups either promote their own interest
we-
or be antithetical to their own
BC is
interest.
a little bit late to the party, but we were talking about
That's
this
okay.
came up a lot earlier about the differentiation
Oh,
between
okay, yeah,
I
that
think-
makes sense.
the world, the conception
I think I kinda
of
got
like
back
the
to-
purpose of life for Ram is about survival, evolution, to propagate your genes, and then Enoch was arguing that our purpose in life is to be moral and have a moral society, and
Of
that was kind
course.
of the angle they came from. So I will now open the floor to Michael Enoch to address some of the
Yeah.
things BC Covington said. You can add to it.
Yeah,
and
I'll
whatnot.
back out here.
Yeah.
And
Thanks,
then
guys.
no one interrupt him. Just
No,
let
it
me,
was
let-
it was good to have you on. Yeah.
let Michael Enoch speak, and I need to use. I have to do my laundry. Replace my laundry while he does that. So
Okay.
I'll give you the floor, big guy.
Yeah, I'll just okay. I'll just rehash kind of because what we were talking about earlier was sort of, you know, what the point of society is, and 50 lampshades here. You normally go by Rem. I'll go with that. What Rem was saying is that the point of sort of a society is to survive effectively, and what I was basically suggesting was that there's a little more to it, that survival as a society isn't an end in itself, and so there's a point where a society becomes so rotten it's not worth keeping around. And I think that a society that kills its own unborn children is so rotten that it's not worth keeping around. So kind of to add to what Covington was saying Covington was talking more about the practical thing of the what like whether this is entirely genetic, right? Whether and you were suggesting that propaganda was a major factor, and I think that's a valid point. We talked about this. I think we basically agreed for the sake of argument that political and ideological views are 0.6% heritable or something like that. But maybe Rocket can correct us on that because he knows a little bit more about this stuff. But that does leave substantial room for culture, right? And if you have laws and cultural institutions that discourage people from seeking out abortions, then you're going to have fewer abortions, regardless of sort of the genes. So
Yeah, I think that's fair. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, and Rocket, do you know exactly what the heritability of
Political beliefs
ideology
is
is?
like
Yeah.
like conservative liberals. I think it was 0.6 or 0.7.
Yeah, it's around 0.6, but I would
Yeah.
just say that, like,
I'm glad I didn't
in
fuck that up.
In terms of abortion, you can roughly correlate. No, you're correct. You can roughly correlate, like, IQ, for example, with impulse control. Typically, people who have
Dude, you're like roboting
abortions
on
have
us.
low impulse because they're not planning out a family.
Anyone else hear what he's saying?
You're
or no?
cutting
Yeah,
out.
no, he's cutting out. Just write it in chat or something. Like,
I thought that was just me. I was like,
or
no one else
whatever.
is
Typically, people who
objecting.
use those things have a higher IQ
oh, this
The
kind
emperor
of
has no
Hanging
clothes
out
and nobody's.
for that situation to
Okay.
avoid it.
I'm back.
So
Yeet
roughly.
Rocket.
Hello?
He's
Sorry.
like cutting out. Yeah.
That was
Rocket,
so
I don't know,
funny.
man. That was like
we were all
IQ.
just listening to a really slow robot voice.
I mean, from what I understood, I would
no
say
one had
like
the heart to tell.
IQ isn't something you 100% want to select for. Like, there are a few outliers for it. Like, I think homosexuals have a very high IQ, but it obviously is very detrimental
think he
to
was also
society to
saying-
select for homosexuals.
Yeah, he was also saying that you had the number right on the 0.6.
Yeah, no, I understood that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I mean, it might have been 6
you wanna-
million though. What?
Yeah. I
What?
think so.
What are we
yeah.
okay, what are we talking about? I just got back.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the number of abortions that happen in the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's around.
Oh, it's about it's about 1 million a year, right?
So
Yeah, I know. It's like half.
It's
Something
60
really
million. It's like 58 million since 1973, since Roe v. Wade.
Yeah,
Boy, fair.
and I think it's like as a percentage of pregnancies, it's very high. It's like almost half or something.
Yeah, and it's only gone up too
What?
because
That's fucking terrible.
it's only gone up too because less pregnancies in general are happening, and the same number of abortions are
Yeah,
happening.
that's true.
So
Jesus Christ.
yeah,
And 36% of abortions were obtained by a certain group. The ratio is just so that we have some context here, because I know people were asking about it earlier. The ratio is 474 abortions per 1,000 live births. That's just the general ratio. So
Okay.
474
it down in,
abortions per 1,000 live births.
Okay.
Live births.
And
So
then,
has
different
this
groups
group-
behave differently, which is a shocker.
That's for
Has this-
everyone, by the way, that 474 number.
has the group that's used abortion rate the highest, has their population gone down, or have their rate of abortion gone down at all, or has it gone up? Because I think it's gone up, and wouldn't that disprove this genetic theory of allowing abortion will decrease abortion?
No, because if
Maybe
you,
they all have it,
if
and it's
you
not till
have
they're all
two
gone.
options, so let's give you option A and option B. So option A is 1 + 1, and option
Right.
B is 1 + 2, which is going to lead to a higher result.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, so if you could say if you don't want a higher result, you want a lower result, you would say option 1 is more beneficial, and you would try to get that 2
Sorry,
down to
my
1.
bad
So
on
even if it
the-
goes up, it goes up
Yeah,
at a
but
lower rate.
Abortion stats.
But what I'm saying is
I messed
that
up the abortion stats. I just
the
wanted to
genetic
correct it real
propensity
quick.
the genetic propensity for abortion, even from a racial eugenics argument, clearly isn't working as much as propaganda, Gibbs, and welfare for having kids is working, because their population,
I just
despite all the
wanted to-
abortion,
Real
is
quick,
still going
Yeah,
up.
sure, but that's outside the scope of this. Like, if you want to talk about that, I'd probably agree with you on most of that shit.
Well,
real
isn't
quick,
it easier to change the
I
culture
wanted
then?
to just add something.
I don't
Real
think
Oh
so.
yeah, go ahead.
real quick.
Go
He
ahead.
just wanted to clarify. Point of information. All right, go ahead.
Point
Yeah,
of
because
order.
I don't want to overstate my case here. So it's a quarter of pregnancies end in abortion. Half of all of them are unplanned. A quarter of them.
Oh,
Damn,
And
that is
abortion.
ridiculous.
So still
Wow.
really high. But
Catechism of the Catholic Church 2272 says that formal cooperation in abortion constitutes a grave offense. The Catholic Church attaches the canonical penalty of excommunication to this crime against
Yeah.
human
Base.
life.
it's latate
Epic.
sententia. Means that you're ipso facto
Yeah,
excommunicated from the Catholic Church if you have an abortion. You have to go to a bishop for forgiveness.
Yeah,
And not
like
related to-
they don't even have to tell you. You just are, and you have to
Yep,
seek.
doesn't matter.
forgiveness, which is awesome. That's how we should be as a society. You shouldn't be allowed to
and
vote.
totally
It feels like we're just ganging up on Ramiro.
You should get your citizenship revoked.
Wait,
Citizenship?
okay.
What?
And totally.
check the text.
organization. And totally not
Moreover,
related-
when we argue about
He
promiscuity
says,
being okay, this leads to more
impulsivity.
abortion.
Yeah,
People with
that's
high
I feel like
abortions. Okay, so you're talking about like the more eugenic. Check the debate room. I don't know if you can pull it up, Animaritus, but Rocket put
sure.
his point down there.
Oh,
I
sure.
feel like this abortion debate always is it's part of a larger debate, and then when you have it, you have two sides that form. One side that says that only sees abortion as abortion and how it can be a tool possibly to be used, and the other side that sees it as a symptom of a larger thing, and so it should be taken away because it's part of a larger problem. The problem is unmarried or unwed family making, and abortion rate is a consequence of this.
Yeah, it's
Plus
just
propaganda.
downstream from that.
All right,
Yeah,
let me read
exactly.
this out loud real quick, if you don't mind.
We're not just talking about having kids. Like two monkeys can fucking have a baby monkey, but we're a bit more dignified than that. We're talking about having stable families. That's the issue. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just read this. This is what Rocket said. He said here to Mike Enoch and Rem, I was saying that IQ correlates with impulsivity, and that people who have abortions have lower IQs because they do not plan out their families. Higher IQ individuals use birth control and condoms and have foresight to not have abortions. So yes, in a way, it's genetic by this. Okay.
Yeah, any sort of policy is going to select for certain traits.
And I don't think anybody is going to disagree that on average
Yes.
the people who are having abortions have poor foresight, and that
Well, yeah,
there's a
you even
genetic
look at
component.
the
But I
interest
think
groups getting them.
I think what kind of the argument that like what BC Covington was getting at was that at least when it comes to having fewer abortions, it's very clear that there are other ways to suppress that, and that they're probably at least as effective or more effective than changing the genes.
Exactly.
And having
It would be very difficult to get rid of all low IQ people.
But for the
You
past
wouldn't
1,000
want
years,
to get rid of all
abortion
low
was
IQ
barely.
people. It's not you're not an immoral person for being low IQ. You're not anti-white for being low IQ
Exactly.
either.
Exactly. Like I wouldn't sterilize anyone. I wouldn't. Exactly. Like this is every society is gonna have a bell curve. So, like I'd much rather sterilize and put to death violent criminals rather than make sure the dumb don't reproduce. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Well,
That's also-
Oftentimes, that's the same group.
very, very oftentimes that is true, but also certain bad behaviors.
So
are
let
not
them do it
always-
to themselves.
What?
Okay.
Wait, you're
But
saying
it's
wait.
not-
Do what to
But
themselves? Be
they're not doing it-
pedophiles?
They're not doing it to themselves.
So
Yeah,
No,
what you're
they're
saying is
actually,
not
yeah, they're
themselves.
breeding out those
we
own
should
genes.
we should allow black violence because most black victims are
Whoa,
black.
whoa, what do you mean black violence? What are you talking like violence at night?
Are we
Yeah,
joking
I think that's
here?
what you're talking. No, we're trying to not get someone banned.
Yeah, we're working on
because we're
that.
streaming. All right, so would you allow a really violent? We should allow a
Just talk
violent
about
group to be violent.
here, right?
Yeah, hypothetically, say it were so that green people were the most violent, and that 13% of them.
Oh my god.
Did you guys ever play like
That's
the
such a,
army
like,
soldiers when you're younger? It's always the tan guys that are the bad
Yeah,
guys.
the
Remember
tan, the vicious
tan?
tans.
Yeah.
So let's say the tan guys are the most violent. By this logic, aren't you saying that we should allow tan violence because most victims of tan violence are tan?
If you could quarter it off to a certain area, I wouldn't mind.
Well, it is
Okay.
cornered off because most violence of tan people is towards tan. It's only a little bit that
because
overflows.
hypothetically speaking, when you used to play those games, there would always be some sort of like entity overseeing the game that would move certain tan soldiers into areas of green soldiers, and thus the violence to be committed against the green soldiers. I was always on the side of the green soldiers, so I want.
So
them
if
to
it
be
were
safe and happy.
100% tan on tan violence, you'd be okay with it?
Absolutely.
Oh my god!
All right.
Oh wow!
Hey, Michael Enoch, would you like to add?
That's some morality there.
Yeah, go
Yeah, I
boss them
think that-
around. See how that works out for you.
Yeah, I mean, so do you want me to answer the question about the tan soldiers?
Or
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like
let's
add
say
your
it.
thoughts to
Oh
the
my
the
God.
discussion. I mean, we've already,
Yeah.
I think, reasoned that Ren's morality is based on evolution, so I don't know why people are so surprised by
And that's
some of
kind
these
of, I
answers.
mean, like,
Well, no, I'm
kinda-
surprised that it is that. I'm not surprised that because it's that he has these conclusions. They're the necessary conclusions if that's what you believe. But I am surprised that he does believe that everything is just genetics over time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Michael Enoch, would you like to continue?
yeah, and we kind of talked about this earlier. We tried to kind of probe and see if we could come to flesh out something as far as, you know, our underlying moral systems, right? Because when you have this, you know, my point is basically that when you have this underlying system that's sort of about survival in an evolutionary sense, you're still sort of smuggling a moral premise and you're smuggling an ought premise in.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, at the end of the day, and that's not really any different than what I'm doing. It's just you're not admitting that it's an ought premise, sort of. So if you want to respond to that, even I don't even really have much else to add.
Yeah, I think we went over this. Like, any sort of ought is the result of your genetics. Like, anything you desire, even if you logic it out and it's logically sound, is a result of your mind being logically sound. So it's not as though I'm trying to to be, I don't know, maybe a soldier with a big nose on you or something like that. It's genuinely just, when you look at a genetic perspective, it's legitimate.
Yeah, and I think that kind of what we got back to there is that, you know, again, the sort of point that we you know, we generally have this intuition that ethics applies to other people who don't agree with us, right? And to the point that we're willing to force people to do things, right? You know, to not do. And so, you know, and that only really makes sense in a framework that's universalist, right? In some very narrow sense. It has an objective moral code where there's an objective set of moral rules that apply to everyone, regardless of whether they believe they apply to them or not. Do you agree with that? Do you think that survival is an objective moral rule that applies? Like, you should care about whether your group survives, whether you
again,
actually, as a matter
only-
of fact.
That's only because we've been selected for that by kin group selection. Like, tribalism is a thing, not because it's an intellectualized thing. It's because we evolved to have these feelings, and it's more practical to accept that. Like, I don't get this whole perspective where, like, you need to, I don't know, like, just write an essay to understand that you have interests as a genetic being. Like, if you didn't and you died off, then that would be it. Like, people with those genetic interests to survive would go on, and thus their morality of survival would win.
All right, I have a question.
No, I get that. I think that's fair. I think most people get that.
Okay. Just to kind of, let's see. I had a point that I'm not forgetting what it was.
Here, can I
You
ask
can
a
go
question
ahead.
real quick?
Like objective morality.
So one of the things
evolution.
that
Oh, I had a question too.
Yeah, let him ask this first, AR-chan.
Sure, yeah, go for it, Enoch.
Yeah. So I guess what would you say to, do you think that somebody who doesn't have your underlying, let's say somebody who has a predisposition towards being a green soldier, has a predisposition towards not being a good green soldier and being loyal towards the green team, right?
Mhm.
He's advocating for the interests of the tan team. Do you think that there's something wrong with that, even if it's driven by his genetic predisposition? Do you think that he's doing something that's bad? Do you think he should be shamed? Do you think he's defective in some way?
Yeah, but
And
it's all
if
subjective.
you think
to me.
okay,
It's subjective to me because of my objective genetic qualities. Like, I view certain behaviors as bad because I am a physical entity that happens to view those as bad because I'm a physical entity that is so. You can have a practical sort of morality while accepting that it's subjective. Like, if I see a woman being raped or something, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to beat the shit out of the guy. Not for any, like, objective, essay writing moral rules. It's because I, as a genetic entity, do not like to see that. I'm disgusted by that, and I'm going to use whatever ability I have as a genetic entity to act against them, to actualize my own, I guess, power or control, or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
What if it's a tan on tan rape? You would just leave it alone.
No, I wouldn't like it,
that's
but
off topic. That's kind of.
but it's
And
like
then we
I
don't wanna
wouldn't
be
feel the
jumping.
same sort
Yeah,
of.
let's not jump between topics.
I wouldn't feel the same sort of, like, I'd still be disgusted by it, but there are levels to it.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
And if
so
I
just
did
to-
feel the same towards it as anything else, it would also be a result of my genetics. Again, this isn't like something that I'm super proud of because I found the truth to life. It's like, it's not a very satisfactory answer, but it is the only one I believe to be objective.
But you don't think that kind of implicit in there?
What if I don't
there's
believe in
kinda-
like genetics? Wow, how would you like go about trying to prove that to me?
Source.
You're a genetic agent. You can believe whatever the fuck you want to believe. Like, if you want to go out and like have the simplest form of genetic, proving it, go out and race mix and see if the kid comes out looking like you.
Yeah, but okay, just talking about race mixing. Yesterday, you were saying to like Potato, you said that it was sad that he race mixed. There's like an implication that he should feel bad about what he did, which implies almost that you're trying to apply something objective to
not necessarily
him.
that. Like, I think this is all personal to me, and it's practical
why
to separate your own personal beliefs from objective genetics. Even though, like, again, you could, what is it? You could, what is that term? Fuck. You could preface everything I say by saying, I'm the genetic thing that believes this, blah, 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 but it's impractical to do so. But if you'd like to do it, go ahead and do it. The reason I'm sad is because of my own personal experience. Like, I see people that go out and race mix, it's usually because they've been taught anti-whiteism. They've been taught their group is bad, and they try to they internalize that, and they try to run away from it. Like, they don't think they'll be viewed as white anymore if they're
So it is
good guys who
cultural.
happens to. Yeah. No, it's absolutely cultural. It's in your subconscious mind, like all the propaganda we get fed.
Okay, so maybe
that
these people
actualizes
aren't.
certain propensities in your genetic
Hey,
codes.
let him explain.
So maybe some of these behaviors then aren't because of a genetic.
No, all
predisposition
behaviors
or
are
whatever.
genetic because you are a genetic entity.
All right, Michael Enoch,
You can feel free to disprove me, pal.
Yeah.
You just admitted it.
You
I
would
don't know.
have
How do
to,
I
in order to
admit?
prove that,
Any
you would
sort
have
of
to
environment,
use
any
science.
You just said you
cultural
felt bad
impulse
because
is
most of the
forced on
time-
you by your
most of the
environment,
time,
which is a
you just
result
said-
of genetic entities acting.
You just said that you feel bad because you felt sad because most of the time it's because these people were programmed into anti-whiteness by the society.
Sure. But that's
Meaning
part
that
of environment,
without the
which
programming, they
activates
would have
certain
had
genes in you
wi-
to do things. Anything
without
you
the
do is a
programming-
result of your genes.
Without the programming, they would have had a genetic predisposition to be with their own, right?
Not a predisposition, but you have like certain behaviors
Well,
that
if
can be
everything's
activated depending
genetic.
on your environment. Your genes are what you are. It's your
Oh, so the
different environment that's going to
okay.
push you into that. Yeah, you can change the
Oh,
environment.
Yeah,
you
but
can
this is
advocate for
society-
changing the environment.
So
I'm
now
not
do
disagreeing.
abortion.
All right.
So now do abortion.
I never didn't. I always agreed with you on that premise. You're the one who seems to think
Yeah,
that I don't think
but-
the environment exists.
Okay, Rocket, what did you want to say?
Sorry, I hope I don't phase out again, but I just was going to say that the society around you can limit the amount of genetic behavior
Oh my
that
God.
happen. Do you
It's happening
agree?
again. I'm sorry.
The environment can limit.
Today's
yes,
not
the
your day.
environment
Today's
can
not your day,
influence your
Rocket.
behavior because your genes are going to always interact with varying environments. Yes, including culture.
No.
Okay, what we're saying though is to get a change within one generation, the way cultural change did to make society so anti-abortion to pro-abortion in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Isn't it easier to change culture to make it immediately go back rather than try to breed out certain genetic behaviors?
Like, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. We
Yeah.
can hear you, dude.
Did you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, we heard you.
Oh, all right. Well, I said what I said. I don't. Does anyone have a response to that?
Hello?
Rem, do you want to respond? We can hear you, dude.
Oh, I couldn't hear him. Something about easier to change culture. I thought we'd been over that though.
Yeah, we're kind of going in circles. And I don't
yeah.
know. I'm just kind of wondering. Maybe AR clarifying question that could get us out of this sort of circle, because it seems like
read the chat.
Alright, I'll read the chat.
Jesus
big guy.
Christ, dude, Rocket, come on.
Rocket is having a rough day, but that's alright. That's okay.
Rocket.
I'll read it out loud.
That's the voice of transhumanism.
Rocket is stalling.
Rocket is gone robot mode, dude. He's become he's become the Rocket. Okay. He says
He's taking off.
It's like the sound of like when you're like when you like put your chin on like something that's vibrating and goes
Oh, you do that often, do you?
like if you're in like a car or something, it's like a bumpy road and then you start talking.
You do it in cars.
Anyways, it's like Rocky's taking off, so he's like you can't talk very well. Anyway, Rocket says E. Michael, I keep thinking like E. Michael Jones, and I think Michael Enoch. Sorry, Michael Enoch. Yeah. Too many E's. Michael Enoch.
Go with the formal stuff, bro.
Or Mike Enoch. Fine, less formal. Society can limit the amount of genetics that are expressed. Rate ? By making abortion illegal, you limit the amount of abortion. Fuck you,
yeah, exactly.
He says afterwards.
Yeah, but you don't breed out those genes that you would like to breed out.
But if they're not aborting people, why does it matter?
Is he saying fuck you to me or to?
No, to me.
Is he?
To me. He was saying that to me for the joke.
Yeah, it was for teasing him about that.
BC, were you here for the initial first hour of the debate or no?
No.
No, because we covered all of this. We've gone over it.
Yeah, it's a little bit of circling, but
yeah. I feel bad because that part of the debate I was walking and trying to avoid cars, but hopefully.
No, it's all good. It was only your keys jingling.
No, but you just said it. You just said that it's not bad because those genes won't get bred out. But if they're not aborting anyone anyway because it's illegal, why does it matter if those genes exist or not?
Because we've been over this.
Okay, I wasn't here. Say it again.
Okay, I'm going to. Calm the fuck down. Enoch was like, he wants certain cultural preservations to be preserved. He wants certain institutions. He wants certain activities to be enacted. And I said, okay, that's fine. So when we got on the topic we're discussing now, I said, if you want those things to continue in the society we're currently in, the best way to achieve that is to let the people who are against that breathe themselves out. It's not a really matter of, in principle, you could enforce any sort of rule to get the outcome you want. It's a matter of operating as we do now with regard to abortion. Allowing it to operate is going to lead to the results that he would want. That's why I agreed with it. It's not like I disagree with the principled position that you put forward.
Why don't we do what we did for like 1,000 years and just promote only childbearing within marriage? Because that restricts people who can have children to people who are pro-family, and then boom, you have it.
Go do it. I'm not against that.
Yeah, we did it for 1,000 years.
Do it again.
All right.
Yeah, it's called making abortion illegal.
All right.
No,
let me
you're
make.
not dealing with a society
it actually
dealt
is.
with for 1,000 years.
Actually
no,
is.
It's not, because society has changed a lot. You're not living in homogenous.
Was abortion
European
legal
societies.
during that time?
What?
Was abortion legal during that time?
You didn't have access to vacuums and some shit out. Like, man,
yeah, but
you're talking about things that are completely different. You're talking about a society that
what
is
do you think back alley
of our
abortions
own
are?
interest group.
What do you think back alley abortions are?
I think they're dangerous things that women don't want to go to as often as legalized abortions.
But they could have.
So, what?
They could have, but they didn't.
No, they couldn't have. No, because now it's not clean, but it's like
so.
The
first abortion was in
1920. There are institutions that have been built up to allow ease of access.
This is like
to
going
these
off the rails.
It seems like
absolutely.
it seems like where you guys are getting stuck on is that I think what Rem is saying is that it's technology that changed, and what you're saying is that it's the culture that
It's
changed that
technology and it's
drove it.
populations.
Yeah. So I think that
Yeah,
that's kind
so
of
I
where
have
you guys
certain
are getting caught
populations
on
I
each
want to
other.
protect. I'm not gonna care if.
But what
other
I'm
people
saying
do.
is if we all do get to a point where we agree, where we go, yeah, that would be good, and that seems to be when there's no abortion. And I'm saying the way then
No,
the easiest.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying
Well, weren't you
abortion
saying to
within a
breed it
certain
out?
interest group.
Well, weren't you saying
Within
to
our own
breed it
interest
out?
group. Yes, because in our population, in our society as it stands right now, there are various
Oh, okay, all right. So
interest
let's
groups
make it. All
vying
right.
for control,
So let's restrict
vying
it just
for
to our
resources.
people.
Okay.
Let's restrict it just to our people then for a moment.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
Isn't the easier way to do that what we had done for like 1,000 years?
Yeah, if you're gonna talk about strictly our
Okay.
people, yeah, I agree with you.
Okay.
Okay. So you want racial abortion quotas?
No,
We
because
don't-
I would
we're
never
not talking-
enforce that on people. I would never go out and harm other people. I'm saying if people that are against our well-being want to harm themselves, I'm not going to be against that.
All right.
All right.
Hmm.
I wanted to ask, or I wanted to make a statement, and then I want to get like you guys what you think about this, Rem, or how you would respond. It seems to me that when you're talking about like
It's
genetics,
the Rem show tonight.
It's
Beautiful.
It's when you're talking about anything about genetics, you presuppose some scientific framework. And before you can even begin to talk about science, you have to talk about like the scientific method and how we observe things. And that requires some system of knowledge or epistemology. And to say that there's knowledge and epistemology requires you to have like a belief system. Before you can have knowledge, you have to have like some standard for what you should believe in. And so when we're talking about beliefs, those come with like there's a hidden premise. And one of the premises that we all tacitly agreed here tonight, and it's just been presupposed, is that the belief that is the most reasonable, the one that is backed up with the most evidence, that is the one that we ought to adopt as true, that we can accept as being as a genuine knowledge being justified true belief. And so it seems that you already have like there already is at least one objective principle that exists, like that I just gave, which is not something that you can deduce from science alone, which seems to contradict Rem's entirely material worldview.
No, I disagree with your premise. Like you say, you need some sort of framework to accept truth, but that's presupposed that you exist as a physical entity. Like any sort of understanding you come to is a result of your genes, is a result of you being here to understand that, insofar as we can prove it. And so again, any sort of like rationality that you arrive at some sort of believed truth all comes from you being physically here. So it presupposes even that. And if you disagree with me, like you're welcome to go out and prove it immaterially if you can. Which you can't, because you need to be materially present to prove things.
I have a little bit of a response. It's actually it's not from Connor or anyone. It's actually from J.K. Chesterton. I think it's actually something Oswald said.
Let's go!
Oswald, let's go!
Yeah, just to give credit there. And he had this point about he was talking about materialism.
What happened?
I'm a
You cut out. Sorry, go back.
Oh, it's J.K. Chesterton.
Can you? Yeah.
Let's
sorry.
go.
He had this point.
Let's go!
We're
What
not.
happened? I feel like I missed something
important.
important. What happened?
Okay.
No,
Anyway.
just say who was the quote
Let's
from again?
go!
It's not. I don't have the exact quote, but it's something.
No, but who was it from?
It was from J.K. Chesterton.
Yo, let's go.
Let's go!
Okay.
I'm not.
Anyways, the point is just
I'll throw out a dancing sticker though.
All right, keep going, Big Eye. Keep going.
he had this point about the sort of the sane man and the insane man, and he had this idea like, you know, the sane man and the insane man both have this insane man has a very logically internally consistent viewpoint, right? Not that it's logical, but that it's internally consistent. But the sane man's viewpoint is also consistent, but it's more encompassing, right? It engages with knowledge in more way. And I think what's happening here is that he compares it to a small circle versus a big circle. That the person who is, when he's talking about a materialist, the person who's a materialist who's talking about a very narrow, only scientific understanding of
Bro, you cut it
the
out.
world where there's no a priori truth. Me?
Yeah, it's back up just a tiny bit. What were we saying?
Okay.
Start at the circles.
Right. So he has this idea that if you have, he's talking about materialists, strictly scientific worldview, where the only kind of truth you engage with is truth you can prove in a scientific manner, right? And he says that the person who only engages with truth in a strictly scientific manner, they can put together a but it's a very small circle. It doesn't really answer all fundamental questions that people have, right? And I think that's something that's kind of happening here. Like, we have these fundamental questions. We have questions about objective moral universals and objective truth, and you need more than one way to engage with that truth to be sort of fully fleshed out, right? So a small circle, right, where a person who actually engages with truth, ideas of metaphysical truth, is drawing a wider circle, right? And maybe
I know what
their
you're talking
thinking's
about.
a
That's
little
like
bit
from the
messier.
first few chapters about orthodoxy, right?
I think so. And maybe
Yeah.
I think it's the
It is. It's like after he talks about the about his experience with like fairy tales and how it like opened his eyes to the world.
I think the fairy tales part is later.
Yep.
Is it?
That's from orthodoxy, yeah.
Yeah, but that's all from orthodoxy, where he talks
Yeah.
about like how you have this small circle that drives you insane because you can go around that small circle quicker than you can the large circle, and that's where like I understand what you're saying. I think like they might have to read the book to get that reference or to understand it fully, but
yeah, it's probably true. It does make more sense in the context of like his own life and
when you like and you think about how he took his whole experience. Did you finish that book?
Yeah.
Well, oh god, that's like
so good, so good. Let's just give a shout out. Let's go.
Big shout out to J.K. Chesterton, GK.
But anyways, I mean, do you think that it's kind of like a way of talking about truth, to only talk about truth as like this sort of, just it's kind of, I mean, you're not a lab coat because I know you're not big on like the, like being super like autistic and obsessed with studies and stuff, but like this kind of narrow viewpoint that the only kind of moral truth you can talk about is truth that you can show empirically and you can say benefits you in like an evolutionary sense, right, or benefits you in terms of your survival. Like, don't you think you're kind of like you're engaging with truth and moral truth in a really narrow kind of way?
I'd characterize it as more humble than narrow. Like, I don't talk about things I can't prove. Like, to the extent that we do these things, that we come up with metaphysical frameworks for our existence, it's because, again, we evolved to do it. We're intelligent animals. We can think outside of the box, so to speak, and so we do it. It might amuse you, it might make you more happy, but it's not a result of anything outside of, provably what you are. Like, again, I don't think that it's bad for you to do that. I'm not telling you not to do that. Just be a grub brain your whole life, but it ultimately comes from who you are. It's going to keep going back to that until you can demonstrably prove that to be false.
Yeah, and again, I think that like this is sort of
kind of going around in circles.
Yeah, because this is like something.
You just assume that
it's something
that genetics is brute and that everything that we know comes from just our five senses.
No, you can like reason things, you can rationalize things, but it comes from your physical being, your ability to rationalize and to reason. Which is what I'm going back to. I don't know if you're trying to presuppose.
You know who else wrote about circles?
Yeah.
What? What?
Oswald, are you still there?
Yeah. I thought it was just me, or like my thing was.
Oh, sorry, my mic was. My bad.
I was listening to this
Spotify playlist.
We're waiting for the punchline. What was the punchline?
Like, Mr. Enoch, if you could disprove me, I'd be happy to hear it.
I feel like you have to prove first and foremost why we should trust science if you're going to start there at the beginning.
What do you mean? I'm telling you to trust physical reality. If you don't, then what's the point of doing anything?
But I mean, like, do you like? We don't have a direct point to the external world. Like, even for science, you have to concepts of you have to rely on your thinking process, and like you said, you have to rely on reason, right? Like, even you kind of said that you have to reason through things. So you do have to have these sort of rules that you go by when it comes to thinking about the world, right?
Insofar as they're observably true, yeah.
You can't observe
But
reason.
but again, but
Yes,
again,
you
like,
can. You can observe reason happening right now. It's 5 physical entities reasoning through things with their brains.
Aren't they dependent on your history too? Say like who your parents are and who they were and who their
well, I
parents
mean,
were.
that's,
Everything's
I think
dependent
he would
on that.
agree with that. I
You
think he
can't
would agree
observe
with
that.
But it's like, what's the point of that? Like, what do you mean?
Well, your deep history to any practical person is as far gone and based on faith as any esoteric metaphysics, is it not?
I mean,
Sure.
you're kind of just taking it as like a
Sure,
brute
but again,
fact
like,
that like
I don't see what
reality
that does
exists.
to counter what I'm saying.
Well, you're saying that you have to rely on both the observable world and observable rationalism. I'm
Okay.
saying how does deep history fit into like your personal deep history, meaning like
don't
your
have to
genetics
have that, I
10,000
don't
years
think.
ago?
If you're not accepting genetics and you think we all came from, like, I don't know, like blue cheese 300 years ago and we've been lied to, it still doesn't change the fact that if I shot you in the head, you'd stop talking. You wouldn't be able to think. And until you can prove otherwise, I have no reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah, but who convinced you of this?
Everything
Richard
I've seen.
Dawkins?
If I'm wrong, then I'm no. The
You've
selfish
seen
gene is pretty
genes?
good, but I don't like his like militant gaytheism shit.
Yeah, okay, but so
Literally
Richard
you
Dawkins-
right now.
Literally Richard Dawkins.
Materialism
I'm
is
not
all
arguing
you've
for
been
atheism,
advocating
I'm arguing
for.
that physical reality is physically real, and that all our thoughts can be shown to come from that. And if
But
you
because
can't disprove
metaphysics-
that point, then
Well,
you
they've
don't
that,
have grounds to
okay,
stand
but
on.
they haven't been able to
what-
show that like consciousness is reducible to physical reality. That's been
Yeah,
yet to be
exactly.
approved.
I think what he's
there's
getting
a-
at,
Really?
though-
But again,
There's
like,
a
we
lot
have
of
ample evidence to
philosophers who are
suggest
dual
otherwise. If I
substances.
took your brain out of your head, you wouldn't be conscious, would you? Like, until
think
you
what he's
prove
get- I think
that
what he's
everything
getting
we're
at is-
that everything we have observed to be is false, then I have no reason to believe it's false.
I think what he's getting at is that this idea about truth being, sort of just about physical external reality is an underlying assumption, right? In observations.
Okay,
right?
yeah,
'Cause-
no,
'cause-
I get what you're
'cause you're
saying.
not-
I'm saying
yeah.
that it's practical to act as though that's true. It might not be, but
Okay.
it's not disproven. You know what I mean?
And
Yeah,
practical-
I know. I get
wait,
you on
wait,
that. I get
EC
you on that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's yeah. I think if that's a disagreement, then yeah, sure.
Okay, and again, practical in terms of what ends, because that's kind of, this was my problem. I was interested in pragmatism for a while, because I thought that it was a worldview that maybe like got around a lot of these thorny sort of issues, but eventually you come to the question of like what are pragmatic in what sense? Like pragmatic towards what goals, right?
Pragmatic in terms of
So,
like
like-
for this. Oh,
Like
sorry, go ahead.
it's like yeah, because like if you're gonna say that like this framework is practical, well, what does that even mean? Like again, you're smuggling a judgment about, like I feel like it's like and I don't think this is on purpose, but I feel like when it's like this game where we point to this underlying assumption, then you go to this other underlying assumption, and it kind of like skips around, right? And so, if it's pragmatic, again, what goals are you trying to achieve, and what makes
Shit.
it pragmatic?
Are you
What's
cutting out again?
I can hear him.
Can you hear me?
I can hear him.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay. So
Better?
okay, I'll just restate it as concisely as I can.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be like, when you say it's pragmatic, like, can you kind of unpack what that means? Because that feels like maybe a bit of a cop out. Like
No, I understand. Like, yeah, I 100% agree with you. It is, but it's just something I can't disprove. It's practical in terms of talking about, communicating with other people. Like, what other way could you get around that? Physically speaking, how could you say there's not a pre-premise baked in there of objective morality or objective reality in terms of physical existence? Like, if you have to not even have the assumption of physical reality being real, or everything you can see, touch, and feel being somehow fake or the product of something completely ethereal that you can't touch, like, how could you operate in normal capacity? I don't understand, like,
okay.
what you would substitute for that.
Do you think it's pragmatic to talk about objective morality when you're making moral arguments, in the same way you talk about the objective material world? Like, if I'm
No.
trying to convince somebody, do I have an advantage if I say that? I think I do. I have an advantage if I say that my morals are objective and your objective feeling.
No,
think
I
that you would
don't
have a
so. I think
pragmatic
that's
advantage?
that would just be two people perhaps agreeing on a certain set of values. Like that's just again their genetics doing that. It's not something that's going to give you an advantage if the other person rejects it outright because of who they are.
Well, but I mean the belief in, I mean, if somebody can reject the material world outright too, and there are a lot of, I mean, not when it has an immediate effect to them, but they can reject like sort of abstract ideas that don't like they could believe the moon is made of cheese, and that probably wouldn't affect them in their right. But you know, what would you say to a person who just thinks that the moon's made out of cheese? Because it's not. There's no like practical. There's no effect for them, right? They can just disregard what you're saying if you say the moon isn't made out of cheese.
So I think the crux of this is physical reality is provable in a very practical sense, and then you have things like morality that come from genetics, where you might have different perspectives, and you might have certain problems that you can both agree are problems. Like hypothetical situation, what would you do? What would I do? You can come at this from two different angles and say, okay, we agree on X, Y, Z, but that doesn't make your overall code, your entire worldview correct. The only thing that is demonstrably provable, that we know to be provable, is that you do have a worldview because you are real. And again, if you reject someone's morality or someone's premise in a debate, that doesn't make them not real. But if you reject physical reality, you can't prove that. Like, you know what I mean? It's not falsifiable, because if it were, then we would have a whole different understanding of what reality is, and you couldn't have anything functional. That's the biggest difference between talking about hypothetical problems versus talking about physical reality. Is one is falsifiable, the other is not falsifiable, because if it were, then we wouldn't be here.
Do you think you could have functional a functional society if people think that moral rules just don't apply if they don't feel like they apply to them?
Maybe. I don't know. It would certainly be a lot different. Probably bad, but possible. Hypothetically.
Yeah, definitely bad.
Not necessarily definitely bad.
If diversity of anything else obviously is worse than a unified anything else, then certainly diversity of morals is.
That's true.
Diversity of morals is it's going to lead.
It seems to me that the best way to resolve conflicts is to have an
how can you have a justice system if everybody has their own justice system?
Where did Europe get its universal moral system from?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah, they feel like
what are you talking about? Every European country has the same law.
All the pagans feel like, we don't want to see pictures of some Jew fighting over Europe. Here's our depiction of Europe. It's like two pictures of like these barbaric tribes killing each other over Europe, as if that's any different.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is different because we have universal morality.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
and if you got rid of the people, you wouldn't, because there'd be no morality left.
Morality is unified under Christ.
There's only the only Christians are the ones in Europe. Okay, thank you guys for watching.
Anime.
I think I'll call the debate there.
Anime, I have one more.
All right, one more question. Let's just wrap this up quickly. Someone says I got my morals from Matthew Heimbach.
I'm gonna come out on an anti-white
What are
show.
you talking about?
Exactly.
You said morals, not physique, bro.
Gym is the temple of iron.
Yo,
it is where you get your morality from.
Yo, my morality
and be like, I'm a fucking moral motherfucker. Look at that shit.
My morality was laid out at the National Justice Party.
BTFO.
Hell yeah, National Justice Party. I was there at the
What?
Sorry, BC. Please continue.
You guys are against national justice. I want national justice.
No, we don't want Wignats. But anyway, so yeah, the question. So you were asking about the terms pragmatism, objective reality. Those all things came into play, and I had a question. So some people in here, I know Anime knows this. I'm in medicine. I work in medicine, and one of the things that every
thank you for your service during COVID. Yeah. Thank you.
Can we get 07s in chat?
Wow.
For their hero.
He's our dancing TikTok nurse.
Yeah.
There we go.
No, I am not a nurse. Trust me.
If I could post in your Discord, I'd post some saluting enemy girls.
There's
I got banned for talking about.
There's plenty of med people who are sick and tired of that shit too. It has only hurt our field by those TikTok nurses bragging about their service. Trust me.
All right. What's the question, then, guys?
But
are you gonna start twerking or not?
Are you going to start goose stepping with Matt Heimback or what?
All right,
No,
just
he's
finish
too
the
fat
question.
for that. I wouldn't be caught dead with a fat person.
Okay, just finish the question.
So, one thing that every epidemiological study, which I'm sure you would agree is part of objective reality, that a type of epidemiology study, they just survey a population and see, different medical defects. You would categorize that as objective reality, right? There's nothing metaphysical about that. Or
What
would
do
you
mean?
say that there's
Like, I'm not familiar with that shit. What are you talking about?
okay? So
Like,
this
give me
is
an example of one.
So yeah, the one I'm talking about, it's about suicidality, and it has found that every single society that has become less either religious or in some form of metaphysics, like less belief in metaphysics, has increased in suicidality.
More nihilistic.
So this is an objective reality consequence of rejecting the metaphysical. This is a physical reality consequence of a society rejecting the metaphysical. Do you not see that as somehow, and by consequence, they breathe less, they have less
No,
children.
I 100% get what you're saying. It's useful,
Yeah.
and that's why it evolved. Like, it's pronatal to be religious. It's pronatal to have a sort of worldview that's unified.
So in
and
the
have a sense
survival of the
morality.
fittest, in the survival of the fittest worldview, does that not lend
No, it
itself
could.
to?
It possibly could. I'm not going to leave room for that not to happen.
Yeah, because belief in, there are certain protective effects of suicidality, both as an individual and as a nation. One of them is having a mass agreed upon religious belief. One of them, on the individual level, oddly enough, is having a dog. I know this seems odd, but this is actually one of the most protective things you can have for suicidality, is having a dog. It seems very odd, but it's kind of, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense.
No,
But
it's
as a nation-
unwavering companionship. It's still like humans can pair
Yeah.
bond with a lot of things. I don't
Yeah, yeah.
disagree with people having a religious sense or people having a sense of objective morality, as far as you can call it objective.
This is kind of
there are benefits to it. I'm not against that in principle. I'm just against. Oh no, I'm against it insofar as I.
Yeah,
cannot
you
see
are
as
against it on
true,
principle.
But in terms of like the societal benefits of it existing, I'm not going to deny that. Like, that's obviously true.
He
But
just
isn't that a
doesn't wanna
rabbit hole
share
into your?
that.
Isn't that a rabbit hole into why you would think something is true if it? Like,
No,
would
because let's say I personally dislike strawberries, but there are societal benefits to people eating strawberries. I'm not going to go out and say people shouldn't eat strawberries. But if they come and ask you, do you like strawberries? I'd say no. You
Yeah,
know
but
what I mean?
that's within your objective reality framework. We know strawberries exist. We're talking about the metaphysics, and there's an objective consequence to rejecting metaphysics.
Metaphysics come from your understanding of things as a physical. Like, if you were not a physical entity, you could have no conception of metaphysics. So again, metaphysics can be viewed insofar as like a tool, as physically real in the sense that they come from something that's physically real. And if that's beneficial societally, that's fine. It's observable, and I'm not going to reject that because it's true. But I'm also not going to reject that those metaphysics of any given person happen to be true as well.
Well, I think you're suggesting that as being biased because you are an objective person. You have no idea if you are an objective.
All right. Someone just joined.
It is what it is.
Oh, Dumptrick did. Dumptrick, did you have a question?
Hey guys.
Hey.
What's up, homie?
What's the question?
Yeah.
Then we're gonna end this. It's getting late.
Well, I'm basically.
Hey, we got a new guy, Noopy. What's up, dude? He says, "I hate these retards who don't get it." All right. What is he saying? If you're, he says you're dumb if you reject God. Based. Welcome, Noopy. Consider giving us a follow, dude. Here, let me put the Discord link for you, big guy.
Reject Heimbach, accept God.
Based. Actually, Heimbach was an Orthodox, wasn't he? Like, walked around with a bunch of crosses. He wasn't a very Orthodox position with his buddy's wife, but
Yeah, was that after he fucked his girlfriend's wife?
Yeah,
or something?
exactly.
This is it was his like stepmom or something like that.
Yes,
It was
his
his
girlfriend's
in-law.
wife. His girlfriend's
and
wife.
Richard
Or mom. His
Spencer.
girlfriend's,
His girlfriend's mom. Yeah, so mother-in-law. That's what it
Yeah,
is.
they're all degenerates, dude. Like all those guys
exactly.
have sex, like
very
Basically,
do drugs and
I'm
Alright.
here to derail the conversation. I just wanted to
Oh, yeah, we
provide.
got a bunch of people. Let's play fucking. What the fuck's that game? Among Us? I'm down.
Yeah, would be nice, but still, I just wanted to provide. I just wanted to provide another example of how not believing in metaphysics manifests itself into physical reality. See, Ram, when you don't believe in metaphysics, I start getting
I don't
messages from
believe in
you.
it?
When you
I
don't
believe
believe in
metaphor.
metaphysics, I start getting messages
I
from
do
you
not
in the
believe
middle
they
of
are
the day,
perceivable
calling me a
outside of
commie for
physical
not
reality.
hating quote N words. So you know.
Wait, what? Does
Yeah,
that
exactly.
happen?
The
Wait,
Kievian Roos steps
Can I
in.
read it?
what?
Can I
What?
read it verbatim, or is that gonna get you banned?
No. I don't know what
He
this
wants to
is.
read out my
I
shit
don't know
first.
why people are throwing around the N words, but okay. Noopy says,
post the
"Yo,
Ukraine
cool
gif.
channel. You're welcome, Noopy, dude. Welcome, big guy. Yeah, we are having
Yo.
a fruitful discussion between
The
Wignat,
only
eugenicist,
N-word
and
that's allowed is the Nicene Creed.
exactly,
Okay.
very based. Noopy, do you have any questions for us? We're just talking about abortion. I think another guy wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, exactly.
Kim Jong. Yeah, this guy, Dominican Groiper. What did he want to ask?
Yes.
The other,
Hey,
the other
wait,
Wignat.
Nah, I'm a reformed Christian. You feel me?
All right.
Yes.
All Wignats are mulattoes. Like, no cop.
That's so true.
Yeah,
That's so
Thanks
true.
for the follow, Bambo. Appreciate it,
They
big
are
guy.
all-
Welcome
That's
to the
so
channel.
true.
I'm
All
like,
right.
Welcome to a
dude,
band.
also it's true right there. There's like literally a Ku Klux Klan in the Caribbeans. Like,
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
okay. Can we ask the questions? I want to get this thing wrapped up.
I just want to ask. I actually agree. I'm not pro-abortion or nothing, but I disagree with one. I agree with one point that the pro-abortion guy said that if we keep the black population low, I mean, as it is,
Jesus Christ.
It already blows as it is. Okay.
Yeah,
You low
exactly.
IQ Caribbean scum, man. You're gonna get him banned.
We
All
were
right.
talking about
Yo, man.
tan
But the thing
soldiers.
is,
not-
I
don't know.
I
I don't
don't-
know where this. I don't know where this weird race stuff is coming from. Dude.
Yeah,
we're talking about tan
no one
soldiers.
was
Yeah, we're
talking
talking
about
about
race till
soldiers
now.
and, like, interest
Of,
groups
of
and
course, the
corporations and
Dominican would screw it up. Okay, I'm moving on. Sorry, big man.
Dominicans are black.
well, no.
Let that go.
All right. Thank you guys for
Dude,
participating in the debate.
10%
Spanish?
10%
Noopy says I'll chime in.
He's
All
20%
right.
Euro.
Let me see. Did you?
Can I be in the ethno state, guys?
20% Euros. Be like, yeah, I'm Franco. I'm Franco's ancestor.
Viva la España.
Noopy, join the
Viva la
Discord.
shit, man. España, you know what I'm saying?
That was pretty funny.
All right. We're talking about
David
abortion
Ortiz,
here.
David Ortiz be like, I'm
Big
right.
Poppy, you know what I'm saying? Cuz?
All right.
I'm
Okay, we're talking about abortion here. Things are getting off the rails, but Noopy says he wants to chime in. Noopy, join the Discord so I can get you in. Just let me know if you want to hop in here. Well, because we're trying to wrap things up. But let me know. Thank you for the diamond, by the way. Appreciate it. Yeah, check out our channel. I do a lot of like reviews and gaming things here. Anything related to politics and culture. I usually show my face, but doing laundry, so I'm not dressed to the nines like I usually am. But looks like, yeah, a whole bunch of people in chat right now. Discord is popping, so I'll probably turn things over soon. But I'm waiting for Noopy to see if he wants to chime in, say anything. Yeah, I unmuted you, Dominican Groiper. You're unmuted. So I'm just kind of waiting. See if oh, he says he's not gonna join. Okay, no worries, big guy. If you have anything to add, don't feel pressured. But thank you guys for watching. I think I'll end this here then. Oh, in chat, gotcha. Well, I'll probably end things here now. Make sure to please follow if you're not following currently. We also have a YouTube channel. I'll be uploading this there shortly. It'll probably be private linked, considering the touchy nature of the subject. So if you're not in the Discord, you might not get that link. So you'll just have to watch the replay, I guess, on D Live for as long as it is up there. We're on the air Monday through Friday, 9 o'clock PST, and on Sunday, 9 o'clock as well. Might do a stream tomorrow as well for gaming. We'll see. We also have a Patreon if you're interested in supporting me monetarily. And we also have another channel that you're welcome to follow as well. This is where I'll put that in chat real quick. This is where I will be moving to eventually. So it's kind of like a backup for now, but I will be moving there. That is going to be my channel in the future. All right, so I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks, guys, for watching and participating. Yeah, a lot of big topics talked about tonight when it relates to abortion, metaphysics and genetics and all these wonderful subjects. So yeah. So welcome, Noopy. Hope you stay around more often. We appreciate new people coming in. So yeah.